Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
It's consistency, being an everyday guy, being the same guy every day. It gets tough during the season. I just want to see what I'll be able to count on. That's it. Those guys that show up every day, those are guys who I want to go to war with.
3-0 to Mookie Betts with the bases loaded and a fly ball to left center field. It's deep, it's on its way, and it's a grand slam home run for Mookie Betts.
Sal, a high drive, right center field. Tolia's back onto the warning track at the wall. Gone. Sal Freeland with a 3-run shot. And the Brewers all over the Rockies here tonight in game 1 of this series.
And the pitch, a swing and a fly ball into right field. Drifting back is Carpenter on the track at the wall. Jumps up, and that is gone, a home run. Carlos Correa got that ball out into right field over a leaping Carpenter. Another 3-run homer. And the Twins are showing up, and then some early tonight. It is a 7-0 Twins lead.
Here's the pitch. Swinging a drive to left field, high and deep, toward the pole. It is a home run. It hit the pole. The Red Sox walk it up, and a grand slam by Pablo Reyes. Can you believe it? His first home run as a member of the Red Sox. And the Red Sox win it 6-2, a walk-off grand slam.
Another day out at the Pinnacle Bank Championship here at the club at Indian Creek alongside Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers. It is a fantastic morning. Sasha did call out the mosquitoes, which she has a point, but the weather, the temp, everything is perfect this morning.
Yeah, we almost got off to a rough start with Shane there because he had my guy, my ex Mookie Betts hitting a grand slam to start the thing off, and I was like, okay,
don't bring exes into the conversation.
Well, listen, the Red
Shane.
Sox literally hit a walk-off grand slam last night. I was like, if you give me the Mookie Betts home run, you don't give me the Red Sox walk-off grand slam, I was going to feel some kind of way, but he made up for it.
Come on, Shane.
We're okay. We're okay.
Hey, don't blame Shane.
He's literally the one that does those. He's the person to blame.
Okay. Go all in on our guy this early.
No,
it's 7:02.
In there.
No, he made up for it though, so we're okay. We got the Pablo Reyes.
Gets her back on good terms.
Yeah, we're good.
Gosh, just a lot to get into on today's show. We have 3 guests from the Pinnacle Bank Championship joining us, and it's spread across the board. We'll get into the family fun activities for you when you show up for the tournament today. We have probably the longest standing member of the Pinnacle Bank Championship, and Gary Java joining as well. And then we have Jim Nedrow, who's in charge of the course and the conditions and just, making sure it's up to par, if you know what I mean, Robbie.
There.
But did you see this yesterday? Okay. There was an open in a baseball game.
Okay.
And it happened to be in Baltimore.
Yep.
Actually, it was in Tampa.
Yes.
But
it was Baltimore.
It's surrounded Baltimore broadcaster Kevin Brown.
Not the pitcher.
Yeah. Broadcaster.
Yeah.
Let's make sure everybody knows that. So Kevin, and I forgot to send this to Shane. Oh, we're going to have to pull this up eventually. I'll send it to him during a break. But Kevin essentially was breaking down just the notes in the pregame, and you're giving game notes. You're setting up the broadcast. You're informing the audience of, hey, X hasn't been done in X amount of time, right? So
just giving context.
In this case, it was the series winning 2 out of 3 at Tropicana.
Yeah, they hadn't won a series at Tropicana in a long time, like 2018 or something.
Right. So he's informing them of all this. Nothing bad was said, and people probably know where I'm going with this if you didn't see the clip. But long story short, Kevin Brown was suspended.
Yeah.
And that was circling social media yesterday. And, the first time I saw it, I kind of thought people were kidding, because we've had a lot of cases, at least with baseball here recently, of broadcasters actually getting suspended or actually getting fired from their job.
Looking at you, Tom Brenneman.
And so I'm Oh, and there's a long drive to left by Castellanos. So I'm looking for something as I'm watching this clip. I'm listening for whether it's a racial slur, some sexual innuendo, whether it's just, hey, you took a shot at somebody and you shouldn't have, whatever it was.
Accidentally swearing, something.
I am listening for something and I don't hear it. So I'm like, oh, somebody's probably just kidding. Like they like Kevin Brown and they're just poking the bear, right? Well, then I saw a couple other people retweet it, repost it. And I'm like, all right, now I have to watch it again because I absolutely missed something. There's something here.
Yep.
So I rewatch it and guess what I hear?
Nothing at all.
Absolutely nothing.
A professional buttoned up pregame broadcast. That's all you heard.
That's exactly what I heard. I heard a broadcaster do notes ahead of a game.
Yes.
Share those notes, those said notes to the people.
Yes.
A graphic pop up on the screen so everybody in the truck knew that he was going to be talking about this one stat.
And I believe the notes were published in the game notes on Baltimore's website as well. The exact information he was saying.
Not only that, but he spun it into a compliment.
He did. He turned it positive.
He literally took a negative of, hey, we haven't done this in 6 years, 16 years, whatever it was.
They were like 3-18 over the last 3 years in Tampa.
And then goes, but hey, the way the Orioles are playing this year and the way things have been going here in Tampa, I wouldn't be shocked if today's the day. Something along those lines is what he said.
Yes. So we actually did a compliment sandwich. So we started off with like they had already won 2 out of the first 3 and they were about to play game 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he started off with they've already guaranteed a series split, which was a positive. Then he goes into the context of why that's a big deal. And then he goes into the compliment of how well Baltimore's playing this year and how they're turning their fates around and how they could get their first outright series win in Tampa in X number of years, right? So it's not just that he spun it into a compliment. He started it with positive, got through the context of why it mattered, and then ended it with the kind of hometown broadcast spin on it, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was basically a textbook pregame notes reading. Like, that's the wildest part about this.
Well, and what really makes me mad is, as broadcasters, like we take our job seriously.
Sure. Yeah.
We do the notes ahead of time. We do our prep work.
Yeah.
And if I were to know I was working for an organization that at the blink of an eye could just, snap their fingers and say, no matter what I say, no matter what I do, guess what? You did this so well. You were so professional. You're fired because you talked bad about us. I think I would sit back in this situation and laugh because and that's kind of my personality. I'm a laugher. If something's so ridiculous, I would just start laughing. But the Orioles should be absolutely ashamed of themselves. Well, and they should be ashamed because they're drawing attention away from an unbelievable season.
Yeah, they're actually good.
To go all in on a broadcaster that spit facts.
Yeah, and he didn't even do it in any sort of like vitriol. It was so mild-mannered. And to finish out the context of the story, Baltimore suspended Kevin Brown indefinitely. And then there was
indefinitely.
Yeah, it wasn't even like, hey, 1 game, 3 games, whatever, which still would have been ridiculous.
Like this is, hey, you need to go through a review process suspension.
And like indefinitely is like we're trying to figure out the legal way to fire you without you suing us for wrongful termination, which I think he might have a case, guys, if he decides to go that route. I don't even understand any rational person, whether you own the organization, whether you're a fan, whether you're just a third-party observer like we are. I don't understand any rational person who can watch that, listen to that, whatever, and say, oh, he was dragging the Orioles.
It's just utter stupidity.
It really is. And like, listen, I understand. I've been on, we call them homer broadcasts, right? Like you're the home team, you're being paid by.
Yeah, but you can be critical of your own team.
Sure, right? Like I've been on those broadcasts before, so I understand there are, there's a lean, right? You're supposed to lean into the team that you're calling for and everything like that. And so I understand the context of what his job is. And even within that context, there was nothing there. Like not even a hint of, I wouldn't even have watched that and been like, oh, this guy is somebody who's unhappy with his employer. That guy looked like he loved doing his job, was doing his job incredibly well, and just this had to have blindsided him, right? Mm-hmm. There is no way while he's doing that broadcast or after he's doing that broadcast, because like we've probably both been there where you kind of say something on air and you're like, oh, that didn't come out the way I wanted it to.
Oh, plenty of times.
For sure, right? He probably didn't even think that. He's probably like, nailed the game notes. Let's go. Right?
It just makes me laugh because of how ridiculous it is. This is prep 101. You take good
he did
stuff,
a great job.
You take bad stuff. You inform your audience. You tell them how things are actually going this season based on what has happened in the past. You dig up history. You are just there to share information at that point. Yes. You're not calling a game. You're just sharing information.
And then he still put the positive homer spin on it at the end. And then last night, so, obviously play-by-play guys, broadcasters, look out for each other, right? And so last night you've got the Mets broadcast, just going hard on Angelos, the owner in Baltimore.
And then who was I can't remember his name, the Yankees guy, legend, old guy.
Was it Michael Kay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Couldn't get there.
That's all right. But yeah, I think it was Cohen with the Mets broadcast and Kay with the Yankees broadcast. And they're just going hard on
as
Baltimore.
They should. And you know what? They're old heads.
Yeah.
And they realize that there aren't enough good young broadcasters in baseball, and Kevin Brown is one of them.
Yes, absolutely.
And so are you really going to strip this away?
You're going to run this guy out of town because he read the game notes
because he told the truth?
Yeah.
And by telling the truth, it didn't even put your organization in a bad light until now?
Yeah, the only thing that put the organization in the bad light was the organization putting themselves in a bad light by being overly, I don't even know if it was overly sensitive because there was nothing to be sensitive to. Like, and you keep saying, he was just telling the truth, which he was, but he wasn't even like grandstanding. Like, there's different ways to tell the truth. You can kind of get up on a soapbox and whatever. He wasn't even doing that. He was literally just reading game notes.
Hey, Shane, let's see if you can try and play this clip. We'll play it by ear, though. Go ahead.
Okay, we'll try it.
For the Orioles, Brandon Hyde has felt like this has been maybe the toughest ballpark to play in, but the Orioles have a chance to do something special today. They've already clinched at least a split in the series, winning 2 of the first 3, and they can pick up a series win behind Tyler Wells today. It's been a minute. The Orioles split a 2-gamer with the Rays in June. They had lost their last 15 series here at Tropicana Field. You have to go back to when our now colleague Brad Brock picked up the win in the series finale, June 25th, 2017, the last time the Orioles won a series here at St. Pete. Already got 3-2 at the Trop this year after winning 3 of 18 the previous 3 years combined. It is a stark difference, Ben, and it is not a bad Rays team. It's not like all of a sudden the Rays became slouches in the American League East. They've led this division every day, but now 2, and the Orioles once again are back alone in first place.
Yeah.
For the Orioles.
Okay, here we go. I wrote down some basic notes that could have gotten Kevin Brown in trouble. It's been a minute. Okay.
Which is actually underselling the fact that it's been 6 years.
Right.
Okay.
Lost last 15 series at Trop Field.
Literally just accurate.
Fact. It's been since 2017, as you pointed out just then. And it's a stark difference knowing what's happening this year than what happened back in 2017.
There's that. And then he mentioned they were 3-18 in their last 3 years at Tropicana.
The only thing
That's it.
that they can be mad at is him saying it's been a minute. And by saying that, it's just alluding to what he's about to talk about.
Yeah. He's just giving context to what he's about to say. That's all.
Man, it is so bogus that this is happening to another broadcaster. It's so bogus. And I passionately will defend this till the day I die, because for somebody that didn't do any wrong, who are you going to get to fill Kevin Brown's shoes if he just basically tells you to go kick rocks? Or
who's going to want that? I mean, I'm sure somebody will want that job, but
or the Orioles put themselves in such a hole with a broadcaster now that he holds everything.
Yeah.
He holds every part of your manhood in the palm of his hand, because now anytime a contract negotiation comes up, he's going to ask for a lot more, and he's got a lot in his backpack to start pouring out if you don't give him what he wants. You just basically ticked off your top broadcaster by suspending him for telling the truth.
Well, and here's the other problem that Baltimore is going to have is now this has become a pattern, because they had John Miller several years ago. I don't remember the exact timeline as their play-by-play guy.
He didn't bleed black and orange enough for them.
Yeah, and he was fired, let go for, I believe, being critical of the team. I don't remember if it was specifically of the owner, which got him in a little trouble, or just how the team was performing at the time. It's like I said, it's been several years, but it was John Miller is one of the best broadcasters in the business, especially with baseball. He's incredible at that.
He's a legend.
And
thank you, Shane.
He really is. I mean, he's one of the best.
Oh, he for sure is. And so they let him go because of that. And, if you really kind of twisted your logic and did some mental gymnastics and squinted a little bit, you might be able to be like, I could sort of see with the John Miller thing.
Notice how you put sort of in front of that.
Right. Like none of it is, you really can't justify it unless
it's not Claritin Clear. I'll tell you that much.
And with him, maybe because he was becoming a bigger and bigger broadcaster, maybe it was they're trying to get rid of him because of salary demands. Like I could maybe find a context where it made sense for John Miller, even though it was flat out ridiculous. This is even 2 or 3 steps further past that. And now Baltimore has this kind of pattern or history of not treating their broadcasters well and getting them in trouble. Like it's hard enough to talk on live air without saying something like accidentally, even just, there's a story about Vin Scully where he accidentally swore on the air in like 1960 because he was trying to say hot shot hit. And you can imagine how those words maybe got combined together. And Vin Scully said a word he shouldn't have on the air. Like it's hard enough to be the best that's ever done it and not accidentally.
And when you're moving at 1,000,000 miles an hour in baseball, especially, because if there's a big play, you don't get them a lot.
No.
So once it happens, you have to go 0 to 100 in a matter of seconds. And so, you may slip up every now and then. And also, they're human. Yeah. They make mistakes. But in this case, no mistake was made.
That's the thing is, if you can't even trust your organization to have your back when inevitably a mistake is made, because when you're on air for that many hours, it's going to happen, right? If you can't trust them to have your back when you make a understandable and forgivable mistake, how are you going to trust them to how are you going to hire anybody else? Because you can't even trust them to have your back when you don't make a mistake.
Well, and that's the problem as I sit here and think about this, because I had said, if you don't have Kevin Brown, who else will want this job? Unfortunately, a lot of people.
Somebody will, because they're hard jobs to get.
Well, that, and it's a Major League Baseball team. Yeah. There's only 30 of them.
That's what I mean. It's being a team broadcaster.
It's a glamorous gig.
And in any of the sports, right? So you're talking about in the U.S., you want to throw hockey in there as well as 4 major sports. You're talking about 120 jobs basically in the entire country
that are play-by-play.
Right.
And most color analyst jobs
are former
happen
athletes.
To be former athletes.
So if you're going through broadcast school, you're not getting one of those, right? So you're talking about 120 good jobs in the country, tops. And so, other people will take the Baltimore Orioles job, but not anyone that anyone respects. They're going to have to go and get young kids trying to get a break and things like that. And then even if they do get them, they're not going to be able to keep them, because as soon as the contract comes up and they've actually got a resume now, they're gone, because I'm guessing I would want nothing to do with an organization that operates that way. And that goes back to, as I said, the owner, Angelos, doesn't have a great reputation, both for putting his team together, for the way he kind of manages the front office, for not wanting to spend at different times and things like that, all the way down to things like this. Like if you can't even get this part of your organization right, it's pretty easy to understand why Baltimore has struggled for so long.
Has been in the bottom of the AL East.
Because this is stuff you can control, right? You can control how well you treat the people in your organization. You can control things like treating your broadcast team well and treating your front office well. you can't always control what's happening on the field, right? You can do your best. You can put the best team together you can figure out, which he hasn't been great at that either, by the way. But I better watch out. He might come and try and indefinitely suspend me.
Somehow, some way, he has part ownership in our company.
He's going to buy Hurrdat so he can indefinitely suspend me.
And then sell it back to Bill for the same price. Just so it's a wash.
Owns it for like a week. But like, if you can't do the stuff that you can control right, and not to turn this into a Matt Rule thing, but if you can't do the stuff that you can control consistently well, then how on earth are you going to do well when things aren't totally in your control? Because let's be honest here. He has total control over this situation. He has total control over all of the things I talked about, treating the broadcast team well, not making ridiculous decisions about suspending guys over totally innocuous comments.
What does this tell you about this man? He's rash. He doesn't think
irrational,
before he
petty.
speaks. He's petty.
Yeah.
Like there are so many things that will turn you off, not only as an employee,
potential
of this person,
employee,
but also an athlete, a player.
Yeah.
If I got drafted by the Orioles and I knew this guy was leading the charge, I mean, would I respect the man? Probably not.
Or, I mean, like I get that Baltimore is not a huge free agent destination, but he's not helping them out any either.
But I'll tell you what, though, this year, he's fortunate nothing happened before the trade deadline.
Well,
and what if I'm a player and I see exactly what you did to a broadcaster and I see how the world's reacting to it, and I'm like, well, maybe I make this team a part of my no trade clause or whatever.
Well, we were talking about this before you went to Gatlinburg, right? We were talking about how it would be fun if Ohtani went to the Orioles because they're actually good for once, and he would
be fun.
Provide a nice bump for them. And obviously, trade deadline's come and gone, but we also said in the same breath that there is zero chance that he ever resigns there. It's not just because Baltimore is not the most glamorous city in terms of, it's not a New York or LA or one of these major markets or anything like that. It's also because it's a poorly run organization,
right?
And has been for a very long time. Now they finally have their farm system and young players, right? But let's be real here. How long are they going to keep these guys? Are they going to actually pay to resign them and stay good? Because my gut tells me probably not, because that's not the history we've seen with this owner and front office group. So,
I can tell you what, a lot of teams are going to want Adley Rutschman. A lot of teams.
There's a lot of teams that are going to want a lot of their players, not just the guys in the majors, but the guys that haven't even broke through yet, right? Because they've got
Jackson Holiday.
Yeah, exactly. They've put together that's why part of the reason they were actually a valid candidate to land Ohtani, because they had the prospects to do it. But again, there was 0% chance Ohtani was ever going to resign there because of this is the way that they act. This is the way that the organization handles itself. And that starts with the owner.
All right. Well, let's completely change gears now, because Ravi and I are going to step off our soapboxes. We are done defending Kevin Brown on Hurrdat Sports and 590 ESPN Radio this morning. But that's not to say that it won't continue on Twitter later on today. We will get into talks about fall camp. We heard from Evan Cooper, Ed Foley, some of the special teams member, Isaac Gifford. We will talk Pinnacle Bank Championship coming up at the half-hour marks of the show. We'll get back into conference realignment. Just a ton more to get to. Brandon Vogel, Mike Schaefer as well. Stick around. More coffee and cream after the break.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back. Coffee and Cream alongside Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers, Ravi in for DB most of the week. We're out at the Pinnacle Bank Championship, the club at Indian Creek, and we are filling the seats well as Gary Java joins us. Gary has been around from the very beginning. It's practice round day, but Gary, on Thursday starts year 7 for you, year 7's tournament for you.
It'll be our 7th Pinnacle Bank Championship presented by Aetna. And as we continue, as Nebraska's only annual professional sports event, College World Series, Nebraska's only annual college sports event. We are Nebraska's, from the Missouri River to the Wyoming border, Nebraska's only annual professional sports event. And I don't have to tell you guys, anybody who watches just a little bit of golf and knows that 85% of the players that you see in the winter and spring on Saturdays and Sundays, they came through the Corn Ferry Tour, web.com tour, now the Corn Ferry Tour. This is great golf.
Well, obviously it means a lot to you to be around for 7 years.
It does. It's number one, it's just great people that I get to work with. Jessica Brabeck, our tournament director, Alexis Boulos, our director of operations. And we've been together for 7 years, never knew each other till our first day on the job, working with them and then working with our almost 600 volunteers. Brett Ballack joined us this year as our director of sales. And we were at one of our qualifiers for the event, which Nate Bonts won a couple of Mondays ago at Firethorn down in Lincoln. And David Honens asked me to be a starter. So in the afternoon, I'm driving around with Brett Ballack, for a UNL coach. That was their home course. And I told people this was like walking with Jesus. It was every place we went. It was either
sign my Bible.
Is it, hey coach, hey Brett. It was either players that played for him or that he recruited and followed and encouraged, even when they went elsewhere, and the parents that were part of that, and the people who knew at the club. And I just sat back and said, "This is fun. This is really." So we
like
had
the third
that
wheel.
Yeah, and that was great. I just sat back and smiled, and that was wonderful. So I enjoy working with the people, you know, and the people that we see are Corn Ferry Tour and PGA people that start coming in the advanced week last week and come in. People that you see once a year. It's like going maybe to a bowl game or, making the rounds in college basketball, college football in your beat. And you see people just once or twice a year, and it's just kind of like, oh, this must be that time. It must be February. In our case, it must be August. It's you can't. And then when you get up and you see a sunrise on a golf course,
oh,
what an outstanding!
Can't beat it.
Just beautiful. Anyway, long answer. What did you ask me?
I said, what's it mean to you?
Why am I still doing this? It's just so fun.
Gary, in the time that you've been involved with this, what are some of the major ways you've seen the event kind of grow and how Omaha's continued to support it?
Well, we see the financial numbers being in the sales end of it.
Sure,
Brett Balak and I, and we're all involved in the sales of it, and seeing the growth and just the recognition that you get from people and from our Douglas County commissioners and from the city and our government, and the turnout and the people that show up, the people that start talking about it, and work, home, church, wherever you go, that you see in February and March or in December. We start working on this in September. We start working on 2024 right at
a couple weeks from now.
Yeah, we're going. But the people that are talking about it earlier and longer and all the time, and then when you see the people showing up, old and young, and it's become a place to be and be seen, like a lot of events and like a lot of not just sporting events, but events and annual events. It's just become that.
Gary, what about repetitive sales? Because it seems like an event like this is easy to resell to somebody. And also maybe talk about the new sales that you guys have been able to grab as the event has progressed. I mean, Hurrdat Sports has their own pavilion now. I mean, last year, working for Hurrdat Sports, we were so small and we were so fortunate to be a part of this event. But now here we are, being a big partner of you guys here at the Pinnacle Bank Championship. So not just like the new, but also the repetitive sales. How easy has your job kind of been, because the event just kind of goes off without a hitch?
You use that word twice, easy. There's no such thing. When you hear easy, as you get older, the older you are in life, the more you hear the words easy and just. When someone says, hey, just do this. Hey, why don't you guys just go down to the Hurrdat Sports Pavilion and just plug in some wires and do a radio show? It takes a little more. But the repeat of business, our continued support and sponsors and client relationships, and then sometimes things change. Business changes. This just in. Let's talk about college athletics. But things change. Someone's their corporate office has a change in leadership, or someone moves in from Minnesota to New Jersey, and now someone else has to approve the budget. People love the event, so you're continuing. You always take care of you take care of the people that are doing business with and that are stepping up to the plate for you, and you put on a great event. You take care of them, and we're talking with them starting right after Labor Day. Let's talk about next year.
Yeah.
And you move forward. So that competitive, that repetitive and past sponsorships, selling 2 and 3 year partnerships, also doing that. But you're always working. You're always, reaching out and looking for the new contacts and the new business. Having prospects out, which we're doing this week. We'll say, hey, you couldn't do it this year, but we really love you and a guest from your company. Come out and be our guest for a day and just see what this is about. So when we talk next year, you know what we're talking about.
Yeah. We're talking with Gary Java of the Pinnacle Bank Championship. Gary, how much, I know you mentioned you start working on this basically as soon as it's over for next year. You give yourself maybe a little break there, but September, you're back at it again. How much are you actually able to enjoy the Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday of the tournament, because you do work so hard all year to get this thing put together? Do you Do you get a second to breathe and kind of just take in the tournament while it's actually going on?
Great question. And yes, but never enough.
Sure. I was going to say, Gary, I don't think you ever breathe.
Yeah, the best, at my age, it's kind of important there. And maybe not for you guys yet, but you'll find out.
I better not see you walking around with an oxygen tank or anything.
I used to make jokes about stuff in health condition. I can't do that stuff anymore. But no, you do get a chance. You know what? One of the most fun parts, and I was telling this is Brett Balix, he's been with us for a year, but his first tournament with us. Mm-hmm. And I say one of the greatest times we're going to have is when we can go up into the Hurrdat Sports Pavilion, NMC Rental Pavilion, of course, Life, and we can go see our sponsors mm-hmm. and our friends and our corporate partners and just visit with people and watch them and visit with them as they're enjoying professional golf. Is everything okay? The food good? The drink good? Everything all right? The service, you got this? Good. And how are you folks doing? How's business? How's it? Hey, and they introduce you to some people and just meeting people and at a great event who are having fun.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Now you talk about the good times, Gary. Tell me your favorite moment over these last 7 years. Like what do you like fall asleep to? Well, what are the sheep bouncing over in your brain?
When you favorite moments, when people say favorite moments in our previous 6 years, I'll say one of them, and he'll be out here this week. David Skins,
sure,
won his. David was our second winner, third mm-hmm. winner, and it was his first professional win. Mm. We were also his second professional win. He missed. He didn't play during 2020. And we did play. We're fortunate enough, late enough in the season, we were able to play and hold pro-ams. God bless our sponsors for stepping up to the pro. But David, he came here and won his second tournament, and he's back here. And there's so many nice people that you run into, mm-hmm. And I won't say especially in this sport, but in this, there's just so many nice, grateful players and staff, and out of all those people, if David isn't first, it's a tie. It's 1A through 1T. David Skins is one of the nicest, most grateful people. He had been away from here. He hadn't been back here for 2 or 3 years. He walks up on the first tee box for a Pro-Am during our Monday and Wednesday Pro-Ams. Here comes Jessica Brabeck, Alexis Boulos, who hadn't seen her in a few years. Just big hugs. He stopped, walked off the tee box. They were glad to see him. He was glad to see them. And then the night before, after his third round, the night before he won his second tournament here, his second Pinnacle Bank Championship, he's out in the practice range by himself. After he finished late, he was in a late group, mm-hmm. and I just sat back and it's
like going back in the cage.
I didn't want to interrupt him, so I just sat there and watched. And he turned around and looked. I said, "Just keep doing what you're doing. I'm just watching." He stopped, dropped his club, just came over, said hello, and visited. I didn't want just mm-hmm. nice.
Those relationships
like that
are different.
Just that, and that's just one of them. Scott Kucheski, he and his family, and seeing the local guys, the Shockies and the Luke Blubers and the local people. It's just. Those are some of the happy memories.
Gary, you're the man. We appreciate you stopping by and enjoy the tournament, man.
Thanks. Yeah, you guys too.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this. When you're done, when you guys, on Thursday and Friday, stay and enjoy yourselves. Come back. Don't forget Championship Sunday on the 18th green. It's fantastic.
That's Gary Javis, sales manager for the Pinnacle Bank Championship. We'll take a short break. More CNC next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes.
It's just really taking pride in being a leader in the DB.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
It's just really taking pride in being a leader in the DB group. That's where it starts, is being the leader with my position group. And then you kind of just go from there. And hopefully I want to be a leader of this defense.
Well, if you like hearing from the guys and the coaches from fall camp, you will definitely love In the Deed the Glory Memorial Stadium that's produced by Nebraska Public Media coming up on Sunday. That's this Sunday at 7 p.m. Central Time on Nebraska Public Media and Facebook Live. You can watch this mini doc, the storied history, the evolution, significance of Memorial Stadium. You'll see interviews from Tom Osborne, Eric Crouch. It reveals little known and lost to history facts such as an underground indoor track and a partial South Stadium collapse in the 90s. Robbie, did you know any of those two things?
I knew about the South Stadium. I did not know about the underground track.
It's a hidden treasure.
That is interesting.
And you'll learn a lot of things like that when you watch this mini doc. Again,
and who's it's narrated by?
I don't know. It's some guy.
Come on, man.
Oh yeah, that guy, Damon Benning. That's who it is.
I know him.
He sits here every now and then.
He's the tailback.
He did take a shot or two on Twitter yesterday of, does Damon still work? Is he still a part of this show? Yes, he is. He's just out coaching. So he's got those fall obligations, which, is weird to me. It's because it's not like they're state champions or anything like.
Oh, wait a second. They actually are.
They are.
Yeah.
Oh, forgot about that too. Well, anyway, let's talk about fall camp. We heard from the special teams unit yesterday. That is not only Ed Foley, but Brian Buscini, Timmy Bleekrode. We then heard from Evan Cooper and Isaac Gifford. I want to Oh, I don't want to stalk anybody.
Don't do that.
See, this is what we're talking about. Kevin Brown right here.
Really easy to misspeak on the air.
I want to start with the special teams unit. And, it's a good segue away from West Side football and Tristan Alvano.
Yeah.
And the battle for kicking duties taking place in Lincoln right now. We heard from Coach Foley, and he says the kicking job is wide open. But I'll tell you what. I don't think there's a snowball's chance in hell that this job isn't Tristan Alvano's.
Oh, really?
I don't think so. And here's why. This dude is an absolute gamer. This dude is going to be the next big thing that you watch on Sunday, kicking game-winning field goals. That's Tristan Alvano. He's got the mindset of a true gamer to where he doesn't get fazed by anything.
Sure.
And now I don't want to just fall back on, well, yeah, because he did it in the state championship game and, he kicked the game-winning field goal. No, I watched this kid last year. I watched him. I don't know if it was a state record or a school record. It was one of the two. Home playoff game. And he kicked like a 60-yard field goal. And it was probably good from another 5 to 10 yards.
Sure. Yeah.
Like it was an absolute bomb.
Huge legs.
Do you know how far, like if you stood on a football field, Robbie, you know how far 60 yards is?
It's very far
to the goalpost.
It is very far.
And how small of a target that you're aiming for. And he can just punch it right on through. Yeah. That's just him. We saw him in fall camp already. A video from Adam Kruger come out.
Yeah.
And it was him kicking a 50-yard field goal that was probably good from another 10, 15 yards. Now, I'm not knocking Timmy Bleekrode because he's a great kicker. He was great at Furman. He embraces competition. Yeah. He will be a true competitor for this spot. But if you're looking for somebody, not only to develop, but the best player in the room, it's Tristan Alvano. The moment is Tristan time. Look, I'm going to lay this for you right now. Do you remember a guy by the name of Sam Cook?
Mm-hmm.
You remember a guy by the name of Alex Henry?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Alvano's better.
Okay.
Tristan is better than both of them.
Okay.
He's Justin Tucker 2.0.
Okay.
I'll take my shot right now. You just wait. That's Tristan Alvano. He'll get the job. That's my call.
Yeah, I mean, I don't doubt his ability at all. Obviously, we saw it at the high school level here in Omaha, and across the state during the state championship. I wonder how much they'll lean on the college experience of Timmy Bleekrode. That to me,
and maybe early they will.
Right. That to me is something they probably. I don't think they'll undervalue his experience playing college. But
if we know Coach Rule and if we know Ed Foley, they're all about personality.
Absolutely.
And they're all about finding that winner inside of you.
Sure.
So it's just about who gives off that vibe more. Is it Timmy or is it Tristan? That's how I look at it. Because if you're going to say they're neck and neck in competition, which I don't know if they are, we're just going to use that as a hypothetical.
I mean, Foley essentially said that they were yesterday.
Yeah. So if I'm looking for one thing to separate one from the other, it's, okay, who's the winner? Who's got the, this kick doesn't make me nervous gene inside of you?
Yeah, and I mean, that's totally fair. The issue is we just haven't seen that at the college level with Tristan Alvano yet. That doesn't mean it's not going to be there, but obviously there's an adjustment. So, I mean, if all things being equal, you're probably looking at, obviously, intangibles making the difference there. I do think Ed Foley said, hey, it's really easy at kicker because we evaluate basically, hey, these are game kicks. These are the kicks you're being evaluated on. So at the end of the day, we're basically making the decision on who makes more kicks, which is a pretty good and easy metric to judge kickers by. Let's say it's dead even, though. I think you're going to look at you're going to be trying to decide between the mindset that Tristan Alvano has shown as a high school kicker, which he's been incredible and incredibly impressive at, or the mindset that Timmy Bleekrode has shown as an experienced college kicker. So there's going to be a balance there that they have to figure out what they value more. But regardless of whether it's this year or next year, I agree Alvano's going to be a terrific kicker. I just don't know if it's going to be
immediate.
Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be this year or if they're going to let Timmy Bleekrode. Because that's the other thing is, it seems like they're both bought in a way that you would want them to be. So I don't think that'll really be a deciding factor. What I do like about that competition, though, is when you're listening to Timmy Bleekrode talk about the competition with Tristan Alvano, which they're like 6 years apart in age. So I think he was he the one that kept calling them kids? The rest of the
no, that was Buschini.
Oh, it was Buschini. Okay. It's like, I just love these. Buschini looks like
he's like, Alvano only hangs out with the freshmen.
Yeah, it's because the other guys are like 24, 25.
Right.
Buschini looks like he's got a mortgage. Like he looks like a CPA.
He does. I like Buschini
I
a
do
lot,
too.
though.
I love him.
Every time he stands up there and then he just smiles. Do you ever find yourself just smiling before things kick off?
I just look at him and I'm like, I would trust him to handle my 401k. I feel good about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know him enough to let him do that, but I can see where you're going.
He just gives off that vibe.
Yeah, but here's what I think about too with Alvano and Bleekrode, because if you want the best player to do it at the end of the day, I set aside age, I set aside experience, because if I'm Bryce Harper coming into the league and I play the outfield, but your right fielder just hit 278, right? He's a good player, but everybody else hit 300. Okay, so just for the sake of this, you have to put Harper in right field. Well, because of the talent and the prowess of him coming up, you're going to put Harper in right field, whether he has the experience or not, because you know that you can develop him faster to be great for a longer period of time. And that's how I look at Alvano in this instance.
Sure, and I understand that, talent-wise, Alvano's probably got an edge on Bleekrode, but again, I think at the end of the day, it's going to be about just who makes more kicks in fall camp, and we just don't know who that's going to be yet because we've still got a couple more weeks. I think Ed Foley said he'd love to be able to tell the guy that's going to be the starter a full week in advance so they have the time to prepare for Minnesota mentally. But that means we've got a couple more weeks of them figuring out and taking kicks and racking up their numbers in fall camp to figure out who's going to be the guy. And listen, it very well might be Alvano. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But I'm not writing off Timmy Bleekrode yet, just because, from what we've seen from him in past years and from what Ed Foley said about where they're at right now, it seems like it's a dead heat. And I'm kind of got to take him at his word there. I will say the one thing that I like is that they're in competition with each other, but they're not necessarily competitive against each other.
Right. And that's the experience of Bleekrode and the maturity of Bleekrode. And that also shows quick maturity from Alvano.
I also think it's kind of the atmosphere and
the culture that is set up for them.
Yeah, that Matt Rule is instilling within the team.
But you also just have to have that inside of you too, because I've played for a lot of teams, and I know I've been selfish a year or two throughout my high school career, at least. And I was young, but still there were those moments where I'm like, no, this is mine. Like I don't want Joey X person to take my spot, because this is my spot.
Yeah, because it feels like you own it. It feels like it's yours. And so it's really easy if you were Timmy Bleekrode to look at things and be like, hey, this young kid is trying to take something from me. It's like, let him take his turn. Let him wait till next year, which maybe he will, maybe he won't. We don't know how it's going to turn out yet, but I'm hoping, and I think it probably is the case at the other position groups, because as we talked to Sam yesterday, I do think there's a lot of competition at a lot of different position groups, and having a healthy competition, but not an adversarial competition for playing time is really, really important to raising the level of everyone involved without sacrificing the camaraderie and culture and atmosphere that Coach Rule is trying to put together. Because it's really easy to pit guys against each other to get the competition that you want, but then you have to kind of re-heal that fracture. If you can get guys to compete with each other without causing a fracture, that's where you're in really good shape.
I take back what I said about Buschini. I may make him my financial advisor someday, because I forgot he's pretty good with numbers. I don't know if you heard him yesterday, but he said, I want to break the school record via gross punt. I think it's like 46.57. And I'm like, who's counting?
Pretty exact,
right? Yeah, but who's counting, right? So I'm really looking forward to the special teams unit this year. And you heard Isaac Gifford say this too. Having a really good special teams unit is how you win football games. When we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll talk to Brandon Vogel next on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's funny. Like, I remember when I was a freshman, I used to think the seniors were so old. And I mean,
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
yeah, it's funny. Like, I remember when I was a freshman, I used to think the seniors were so old. And I mean, I'm sure he looks at me like I'm real old because I'm 23, he's 18. But as you get older, I kind of don't even really view age on the tee. So I kind of just assume these freshmen are the same age as me. I sometimes forget that. But yeah, he acts like a freshman a little bit, but he's pretty mature for his age. And I enjoy working with him and spending time with the freshmen. And really, most of the freshmen I'm around, I've noticed kind of the same thing. They've kind of noticed they need to mature and be ready because we're not slowing down for anyone. They got to catch up.
That's Brian Buccini over at Fall Camp. Coffee and Cream back with you, 590 ESPN Radio. We're live on Twitter, live on YouTube. Appreciate having you with us. You can get involved via the comments section on the YouTube page. You can also give us a call, 888-638-4876. At this time, let's welcome in Brandon Vogel, our first guest of the day. Vogues, we're actually out live at the Pinnacle Bank Championship this week, so that's why you see some new scenery and a new backdrop. Although you get the Hurrdat Sports Pavilion behind us, you don't actually get the golf course, unfortunately. So you don't get the best view, but where we're looking, we get the whole course. But it's great to see you.
Good to see you. And a little bit of sunlight's always good. That's kind of my issue here in this office. But glad for you guys.
You don't have any lamps down to help you tan or anything like that?
No, I should probably look into that though. I probably am vitamin D deficient.
Folks, we just got done talking a little bit about the special teams unit, who we heard from at fall camp yesterday. And, Ravi said something that had me thinking about the competition between Timmy Bleekrode and Tristan Alvano. How much do you think that the way they kind of talk about it, the way you heard Bleekrode talk about it and not take anything very personally, how much do you think that has to do with him and just the way that he goes about his business himself versus the culture that has been set up at Nebraska for him to say the things that he said yesterday?
Yeah, good question. I think it's probably mostly Bleekrode and just the type of person he is. He's a little bit more experienced, obviously a transfer who came up from the FCS ranks. I think that all kind of factors in here. But I do think you have to give a share of the credit for that to just a culture of actual competition. Now, every coach in the country is going to say that they want that. But, it can become tough to navigate. Like, I look at it from afar and be like, Bleekrode really couldn't have had a much better season statistically than he had last year. I don't think he missed, he had one extra point blocked, and I think he missed one or two field goals. So to have a true freshman come in and challenge for that would be difficult. But he seems to be beating it head on so far. So a lot of credit to him for that.
Brandon, I want to stay on the kind of competition side of things. It seems like there's more positions open or up for grabs than there have been in recent memory. And having healthy competition at those spots is obviously part of that. Just from what you've seen so far in spring and fall camp compared to more recent years, is it a matter of, hey, we just have a new coach, he's looking at everything with new eyes and new systems in mind and everything like that? Or is there more, hey, there's a smaller gap between the ones and the twos than there used to be?
Yeah, I think I tend to default a little bit, at least, towards a new coaching staff. So anytime that's going to be, you have that scenario, the two deep kind of gets a little murkier. But I think this one, sort of like we were just talking with Bleekrode, okay, maybe that's kind of the situation naturally, but then what this coaching staff has come in and what they've talked about and what they've done has only added to that piece of it. And what I mean there is, when Rule and his coaches talk about, hey, we came in and we saw these guys, maybe guys who haven't played a ton or, only showed it in flashes. And they're like, that's a really good player. I mean, to hear Rule on, I think it was on Saturday, talk about Isaac Gifford, it kind of lit up my brain in a way that I was like, why didn't I feel this way, 3-4 years ago when he was coming out of Lincoln Southeast? His brother was a captain, extremely athletic. So yeah, it kind of makes sense that Isaac Gifford would be extremely athletic, probably have some pretty good leadership traits. And Matt Rule called him. He's like, he's an NFL player. But Gifford didn't get an offer from Nebraska until relatively late in that process. So it's things like that I think add to this a little bit of coaching staff. Yeah, you're going to open things up and give everybody kind of a clean slate when you're new. But they also, I think, take a lot of pride in kind of looking for those uncovered gems or players who maybe have a specific skill that we haven't really seen used to this point.
We're talking to Brandon Vogel, managing editor at Hail Varsity, at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Vogues, this staff, this team lives in the present. You heard Matt Rule say it a couple days ago. See people for who they are, not what they could be. Then you heard Evan Cooper yesterday say, if you look too far ahead, it can get overwhelming. How much does this show that this staff and this team really lives for today, that they don't that they don't have any skip days and aren't worried about what's to come, but worried about right now?
Yeah, I mean, they keep saying it, and if you're really about that outlook, you kind of have to keep saying it. You kind of, if you're a fan or a media member who consumes all of these comments, you almost have to get tired of it, because if you're really going to be about that, you've got to start every day thinking that way. And, I think it's one of the missing ingredients at Nebraska when you look at maybe the past 10, 15 years, certainly the last 10, of there's so much that you're afforded if you're a Nebraska football player or coach based on its history of success. And that's great. But it becomes pretty easy, I think, to feel like maybe you've earned more than you have. And that goes back to something Rule said earlier in camp too, where he was just like, they don't give you the wins. We can give you a brand new facility, all of that stuff. They don't give you the wins. And it's hard at a place like Nebraska to keep sight of that, I think, as simple as it sounds. So for this coaching staff to continually hammer that point home, I mean, all fall camp we've heard, and we're going to continue to hear it until the end of August. Like, hey, we're just trying to earn the right to feel confident going to Minnesota. It's not a novel approach in the broad spectrum of college football, but it feels pretty new at Nebraska to me.
Brandon, I want to switch gears on you here a little bit with something I've been thinking about quite a lot. I think that probably the biggest distinction between the 1 and the 2 on this team might be at the quarterback spot. I understand there's other guys that are likely starters, but I think the gap might be biggest there. At the same time, I'm thinking about how I believe they're going to want to try and get the QB run game going quite a bit. Have you started to think about how they might try and balance putting Jeff Sims at risk versus understanding what the position looks like behind him?
Yeah, I think they'll be pretty selective with how they use Sims in the run game. We know that they want to. We know that they'll have some things, but watching some South Carolina games recently from this past season with Spencer Rattler, and Satterfield was obviously offensive coordinator there. Rattler was a guy he is a guy who could hurt you with his legs, but wasn't what they were asking him to do. Mm-hmm. I'm expecting something pretty similar for Sims. It feels a long time ago, but it was just in the spring where we kind of heard a lot of praise for Harburg, and obviously extremely athletic, can give you some of that run element. So I still think maybe there's some ways that they'll utilize him with some specific stuff, but I think you're right, Robbie. Like the drop from 1 to 2 at quarterback, when you talk about like everything's, feels good and new and Nebraska's trending up without having played a game. When you look at potential like roadblocks or problems that could develop, I think that QB spot could be one if you're dealing with some injuries. In some ways, like the most under the radar but probably important development that nobody's talking about is how far have Chuba Purdy and Heinrich Haarberg come since the spring, because odds are you're going to need them. I mean, when's the last time Nebraska played an entire season with one quarterback starting all 12 games? I can't remember. You might have to go all the way back to Taylor Martinez.
Now, Vokes, this is interesting because I know I've done it before, and I know a lot of the fan base has done this too, but why from the very beginning do you think everybody, when they talked about Jeff Sims, talked about him as a dual threat quarterback, a running quarterback, though? Like, that term was always used, always thrown out there. Yes, we've seen and we've heard from the coaching staff, like, hey, we're probably going to use his arm more than he's going to use his legs. It's a weapon. It's not there. But why still today do people not want to really like buy into that from the coaching staff? Why are they kind of just still thinking, no, Jeff Sims is a running quarterback?
Yeah, good question. I think a lot of that. So Jeff Sims as a recruit was kind of like a big enough name that I think broadly, like, college football fans knew about him. And it was a big deal that he went to Georgia Tech. That was, he was a guy who had offers from Ohio State and the like. So to end up at Georgia Tech, and then he did, if you look at his numbers there, he did have a good amount of rushing yards, I think over 300, 400, a couple of those seasons. But at Georgia Tech, because of him being one of the best recruits I think they've probably signed in the past 20 years or so, he had to be a little bit of a dual threat. He was their main offensive threat for most of those seasons. So I think those two things combined, he kind of came in as a dual threat guy to the point where, when Rule or maybe it was Satterfield started talking about him as a legitimate pro quarterback prospect, it's kind of like, I was like, yeah, I guess I hadn't really thought of Jeff Sims in that way. And I didn't watch a ton of Georgia Tech, but definitely caught a handful of games over his 3 seasons there. So I think it's a little bit of that. Like, people don't talk about his arm talent, but the coaches do. They talk about it quite a bit.
Brandon, is there a position group where you don't have the answers yet, but you like the multiple choices that you have? Obviously wide receiver comes to mind in a place where you don't have a lot of answers necessarily. The running back room, don't necessarily know where you have a lot of answers. I think of the defensive line. Is there one of those groups where you're like, hey, I don't know what this is going to look like, but I kind of like their chances based on the players involved?
Interesting. My gut reaction is I don't know if there is for me, because my mind kind of went to some of the spots you mentioned. The first one coming to mind was D-line. Like, I don't feel like I know exactly how that's going to piece together, but I can't quite say yet that I feel okay with like the talent available. Just because they're really young there. And if you get a couple of those true freshmen to like show up and perform well, then okay. But I have a hard time kind of putting that on true freshmen right now. Sort of a little bit similar with wide receiver. Like you can squint and see a way where it's like, okay, well, Garcia Castaneda kind of picks up from where he was, coming out of New Mexico. You get some big plays. Xavier Betts, feels like he's back on the trajectory he may have been on in his first season or two. But it's just it's a lot of ifs at those two in particular. Maybe running back, I still don't feel like I have a great sense of who's going to take the bulk of those carries, but that's one where I kind of look at maybe the 3 top guys they have and think, yeah, you're probably going to be okay there. So if I had to pick one, it might be running back.
Now, Vogels, you have me still thinking about when you were talking about earning the right to win, and it had me thinking about those Coach Rule core philosophies. We see it all the time with his players. They see it, the fans see it, and the national media has drawn attention to it. But do you think other college football fans who once slotted Nebraska as an easy W on the schedule are a little concerned about everything they're hearing this offseason from the national media and this new staff?
Yeah, I think there probably is a little bit of concern there, whether or not they're, taking note of what's coming out of camp or the off season. It might be more just, I think Rule has a lot of respect in the college ranks in particular, and respect in the way of, not the up and comer, G5 coach, which has become over the years kind of the traditional path to kind of Power 5 jobs, but he's kind of a coach's coach. It's one of those where it's just like, yeah, you know what, when we play a Matt Rule team, they're going to be really well prepared. They're going to execute at a pretty high level. It's just not going to be fun. And whether that's, I think that's true. You kind of set that reputation when you're going 1-10 at Temple, when you're struggling in year 1 at Baylor. And that's, I think, if there are teams out there being like, Nebraska might be coming here finally in the Big Ten, I think it goes back to those early seasons where you really set the stage for, yeah, we're going to be a tough out. Whether or not we're ready to be good right now, we're going to be a tough out, and you're not going to enjoy playing us.
Brandon, I wanted to ask you a little bit about the conference realignment stuff that's been going on since you were here last week. Obviously, some of it impacts Nebraska directly with the Oregon and Washington move to the Big Ten, and then you've got the rest of the mass exodus from the Pac-12 to the Big 12. As you kind of are watching this all play out and seeing the landscape of college football kind of reshaped again, I guess just what are your thoughts in terms of what maybe the end game is here?
I mean, I don't think I have some wild kind of outlook that's much different than the consensus, or what seems to be the consensus of the Big Ten and the SEC are going to continue to basically amass power. And what happens to everybody else, who knows? I mean, you look at the teams left in the Pac-12 beyond next year, and it's like, yeah, who's gonna eventually snap up an Oregon State or a Washington State? What if nobody does? And it's I was thinking about it this morning. So we're headed for an 18-team Big Ten, unless they, continue to add more before 2024. For a long time, the Associated Press poll's been around since 1936. For a long time, it only ranked 20 teams. Like, that's almost Nebraska's conference now. And working on something for the magazine of, we had our staff kind of do 10-year projections of for all different sports in Nebraska. And it's, do you think that this will happen in 10 years? Brady Oltmans wrote about, is Matt Rule still the coach 10 years from now? I'm taking, is Nebraska going to win a conference title in the next 10 years? And it's kind of hard to even guess, because we don't know what the Big Ten is going to look like 10 years from now. We have an idea of what it will look like next year, but schedule, all that stuff, what's it take to win an 18-team conference? We've never had to find out in any conference.
You have to have divisions again, right, in order to win an 18-team conference, or even a greater number there? Because I was talking to Ravi yesterday, and I said, what number do you feel comfortable with at the Big Ten to be at if we do stay the way that we are right now with a Big Ten, an SEC, a Big 12? Is the number 20 so that you can then circle divisions once again and do things geographically? Is it 24 so you can do 6 across the board? What does that number look like in your head, B-Vokes?
Well, it's not 18. 18 is kind of tough to do anything with, because I've thought that too. The Flex Protect Plus, RIP. Who knows if that'll come back, which was such an insane name to begin with. But you just look at the map of the Big Ten now. It's like, yeah, well, okay, maybe it makes sense to bring the divisions back with Oregon and Washington in the fold. But does that mean Nebraska is? I mean, they're the westernmost team until those teams arrive. Do they get lumped in? Is Nebraska just going to be going to California or the West Coast 3 times every fall if that becomes the division? So maybe if you added 2 more that were somewhere between Nebraska and those West Coast teams, you could get away with it. It would become a little bit easier. But who are those teams? Colorado. It's not Colorado. It's not Utah now. So. It's a difficult problem to solve, but I do think, okay, if you got to 20, then you have 2 9-team divisions. You play 8 games against your division opponents. Well, it'd be 9 games. But then what do you do? So does Nebraska never play, say, Ohio State or Michigan? It's tough. And that's almost why you have to avoid divisions as you once you get bigger.
Unless you get smaller groups, unless you get 4 or 5 teams in a group.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and so then I won't do the math live on the air, but say you wanted 4 pods, and then you could have your own little mini playoff, pod winner 1 versus pod winner 2, 3, and 4. But what's that math shakeout to? 20, I guess, 5-team pods. So yeah, 8 teams, whatever it is, it ain't 18. I guess that's all I know at this point.
Brandon, you mentioned one of your predictions in the magazine of will Nebraska win a conference title in the next 10 years.
Don't ask him to spoil it.
Well,
now,
I'm not going to. I just want you to maybe talk about here, because it piqued my interest. Moving to a 12-team playoff and moving to a, I don't know, let's say 10 years from now, the Big Ten has 24 teams. Is that crazy? Is it easier to make the playoff than it would be to win the Big Ten at that point?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it absolutely is. Even
kind of like college basketball then, right?
Yeah, it is. It'll be interesting so does that make a conference title more valued, or less valued? Is it all about the playoff? Because it's going to be, I think, in a 12-team playoff era, like the Big Ten and the SEC are always going to get 2 teams in, and they're going to probably trade a little bit. They'll get a 3rd team in maybe once every 2 years, so call it 2.5. The Big Ten is going to average 2.5 playoff teams a year over a 10-year span or whatever. So by that virtue alone, it becomes quote unquote easier. I mean, you still got to be basically a top 15 team to make the playoff than it does to win the Big Ten title. I mean, it reminds me a lot of volleyball. Coach Cook has long said, it's harder to win the Big Ten than it is to win a national title, because there can only be, there's only one national title winner, but the tournament field starts at 64, and it's just kind of the season-long grind to do that. So it gets interesting when you start to think about conference titles and just Nebraska's drought, which there's 9 teams that have won 900 games all time. I'm not done compiling the research, but so far I think Nebraska's current conference title drought is the longest of those contemporaries.
Brandon Vogel, we appreciate your time this morning, man. Thanks so much. We'll talk again next week.
Sounds good, guys. Thanks.
That is Brandon Vogel at Brandon L. Vogel on Twitter. Ton of good thoughts in there with fall camp to kick things off and then conference realignment. I'm going to have to go back and listen to the last 7 minutes of that interview because there was so much in there. And when he mentioned the pod system and coming out of a pod, I'm like, oh, wow. As much as I thought about putting teams in divisions, I hadn't thought about hey, let's just play the pods out and then have the pod winners play other pod winners and then get to a eventual champion. That's an interesting,
a Big Ten playoff, basically.
That something like that,
like a conference tournament in basketball,
right.
Essentially. I mean, that could be really interesting.
Before we move on, one more time, I'll tell you about In the Deed, the Glory Memorial Stadium, a great segue away from Brandon Vogel. Nebraska Public Media's newest local sports doc follows the evolution of the stadium. You get interviews with T.O., Eric Crouch, Trev Alberts, Mike Babcock. Damon Benning is the narrator. And remember, Memorial Stadium costs $450,000 to build. Yeah, it's worth a lot more nowadays, Robert, just so you know. You can catch that August 13th, 7 p.m. on Nebraska Public Media and Facebook Live. Okay, we'll take a short break. We'll be back with more Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back, Coffee and Cream, alongside Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers. Happy to have you with us as we are live out at the Pinnacle Bank Championship, the club at Indian Creek. It is practice round day, Tuesday, August 8th. The event kicks off on Thursday. That's first round play to the championship round on Sunday. The Pro-Am, of course, tomorrow. But we'll be out here all week, and we're happy to be joined by Alexis Boulos, Director of Operations and Events for the Pinnacle Bank Championship. Alexis, good morning.
Good morning.
How
Thanks
you
for
feeling
coming.
this week?
Hey, it's Tuesday. We got through yesterday and just keep checking everything off the list.
So I don't know. You probably know the number, and I'm just so curious about the weird things, the odd things. How many tables, how many chairs do you have to set up for an event like this?
Why would you even ask me that? I don't know.
It's massive.
I don't know.
I look behind me, I stand up, and I'm just like, that's more than I want to carry.
Well, it's 40,000 square feet of temporary structure that we build in 30 days.
Oh.
So that's the math.
You guys are like extreme home makeover at the
I
end.
don't
It's just like, bus driver, move that bus.
It's not always pretty. I mean, we do the best we can.
Well, you said it when you walked up. You're like, everything that doesn't grow out of the ground is what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's toilets and fence, and we have lots of great partners, which is the most important thing because you can't do this without an amazing team. So
Alexis, I'm always curious with people that put on these huge events like this, where is your biggest stress point? Is it when the tournament's actually going on? Is it like day of? Is it the month before when you're building 40,000 square feet of temporary structures? Like, when is your peak stress level?
Take a
for
seat
this
on the couch and talk about your
exactly.
feelings.
Well, it's phases, right? So
Okay.
the first phase is building. So if the weather is wet, like we've had the wettest July in the history of the state of Nebraska or some nonsense, doesn't rain for months, and then it rains when we're trying to build all these structures.
Sure,
So
why wouldn't it?
the one thing I can't control is the weather, right?
Yeah.
So that's super stressful to make sure that we're being safe and courteous of the golf course, because this isn't my house and I don't want to mess it up.
Sure.
So when we're doing driving stakes, we don't want anybody to get hurt. So those are stress points for me. On like stake driving day I hate it because it's like there's power and water and main lines and all these things that we have to avoid, right? Putting the boat in the water, the Hurrdat Harbor, that's like that day is the worst for me because Valley Marine comes out here with like 10 guys and they get it takes us forever. Later I'll tell you stories about the concrete behind you that we destroyed a few years ago and had to replace 48 hours before the structure behind you had to get built.
Oh, wow.
It's just it's phases, right?
Sure.
Then when there's humans out here, we have to worry about their safety. So not only is there competitive golf going on, PGA Tours here, these guys are doing their best to further their career and make money and get get on the PGA Tour. There's spectators out here, 40,000 plus people that we need to feed and water and make sure that they're safe. So I'm basically stressed out for about 4 months of the year.
Alexis, answer this for me, because as I think about, how I grew an appreciation for the sport, it took me probably until late high school, college to like really become a golf fan.
Sure.
But an event like this is so family friendly that you guys always push like, hey, bring the kids, come out. There's a lot of things for them to do. What are those events for the kids to keep them engaged while they're here?
So Youth Day is Saturday. It's always a really fun day. We have a great partnership with RSM. They're doing the RSM putting challenge. So we're going to raise a lot of money for charity. There's going to be kids out here participating in the putting challenge with some of the pros from the Corn Ferry Tour. So that's going to be fun. We're going to have autographs from athletes from around the state, at universities from around the state that are going to be out here. There's going to be free snow cones from Spectrum Snowball. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
And it's just going to be fun. The PGA section does a great job of partnering with us there. The guys that are on the Corn Ferry Tour are super engaging with these kiddos. It's just fun. And if you don't love golf, that's okay. There's great people watching, if we're being honest.
That's for me.
There's lots of things, lots of food, lots of drinks. And we're supposed to have wonderful weather, knock on wood. So, the kiddos come out, and obviously there's going to be great interaction with social media down here on 17. You can do a lot of interaction there. Walk the golf course. This is gorgeous, guys. This is amazing and beautiful. And a lot of people don't see past 18 and 17. But if you walk just up this hill behind us, there's like a great little corner where about 5 holes meet, 13, 15, 11. It's beautiful out there and quiet. And during COVID, when we had no spectators, that's where I actually watched golf, because that was the only year I've actually been able to go watch golf.
Alexis, if you're like me, don't have any kids, don't want to hang out with the kids at all, for the I think yesterday I heard that those snow cones can be made a little boozy for the adults.
They can, and this is my best idea of the year. I'm just going to say it. I'm going to say it out loud.
I just want to say I love you.
Okay, so Spectrum Snowball is going to make the snowballs, and they have several different flavors. One is going to be mixed with the On the Rocks jalapeno pineapple margarita, and it's like a coconut snowball, and we're going to put that on top of it.
Sold.
There's also an espresso martini one that they're putting on their mudslide flavored snowball. And then we're putting them in a cup, and they're going to have a straw because they get a little more like a slushie. I'm telling you, that's going to be the best thing out here. If you don't have the kiddos with her, even if you do, your kid gets a free one on Saturday, and I'm going to get mine, and it's going to be great.
That's where you can find me. Either that, or we've also got our Patron Zone over here.
We do. Yeah. The Patron Zone is open to the public. KPMG Fan Zone is open to the public. That's right. Going to be up on between 9 and 18. There's great food from Mouth of the South, Jams, Oklahoma Joe's. So there's lots of stuff out here for people to eat and drink and have fun. And it's just a great 4 days. It's a wonderful event for the community. We get lots of volunteers from outside of the state, and it's just fun for everyone but our staff.
Alexis, outside of the alcoholic snow cones, which is your brilliant idea, what other brilliant ideas did you bring to the table this year?
Oh, geez. I don't know.
You guys moved the parking lot, right? You don't have, the PGA stuff all set up.
So everything is always changing, right? So we always try and get better. The structure behind you has never been the same thing twice. The structures on 18 have never been. We try to just tweak and make things better for functionality. Snowballs this year, we had our Pro-Am party at Barnado on Sunday night, which was fantastic, because sometimes we have it at the golf course and then you have to worry about rain, and our staff then has to kind of focus on that on Sunday night. So that was a great idea. Barnado, obviously, we're having the concerts again on Friday and Saturday night, so that's going to be fun. There's a whole new group of people that are coming out to the tournament that may not have known we even existed. So if you have tickets to the concerts, come out to the golf tournament. You get in free on grounds tickets with your concert ticket. So even if you don't like golf, come an hour early, walk around, see what it's about, and then you might decide you want to come back.
Or go drink early.
I was like, get some
right?
Or have a slushie. I
Boozy snow
mean,
cones.
I don't know. A boozy snow cone.
I mean, you had me sold at boozy snow cone.
I'm still daydreaming about it.
So I know you said that, these 4 days are really stressful for your staff and you. Is there any part of the tournament you get to actually just like take a breath and enjoy?
Sunday is a beautiful day. Not only for us, but I think for the fans and for the players. It's an amazing culmination of the week. And to watch one guy, either he's going to get enough points by winning to be up on the PGA Tour, or maybe this is his first year, or maybe he's a rookie and it's his first win. Either way, that moment on the green when he wins is life-changing for him and for his family and for his career. And so that's my favorite moment. And sometimes I have to stop myself in whatever fire drill is happening at that time to make sure that I'm there to kind of see the last putt or the winning putt or whatever it is, because it can be emotional for them and their caddy and their families. So Sunday is a beautiful day. So if you are volunteers, really love it. The tour loves it. So if you're out here, make sure that you're out on 18 green when the last round, and you see those final putts from those guys, because it's pretty great.
Now, Alexis, you've been doing this a long time. You talk about the emotion for the golfer, the caddy. What about the emotions for you? Like, what gets you most emotional about the event?
Okay, I'm going to say this out loud and pretend that no one else is hearing it. So I had a realization last week that this is the 20th year that I've been working on events on the PGA Tour.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, man, I'm not that old, right? So for me, sometimes I just have to take a moment and look at what we've got going on and say, hey, we did this all together. We did it as a team. It takes a village. And in those last moments of the week to just appreciate what we've achieved, that makes me emotional.
Alexis, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much. Enjoy, and hopefully you can enjoy at least a little bit of the tournament on Thursday, Friday, Saturday before Sunday.
It'll be a great week.
We appreciate you. Alexis Boulos, Director of Operations and Events for the Pinnacle Bank Championship. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll get back into conference realignment chatter next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes.
It's holding guys accountable to the standard, and guys holding me accountable to the standard. You know, as an older guy, I've seen a lot. It's holding guys.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Sauter.
Oh, man.
Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks, Ryan Edwards, for me.
Here is Mike Schaefer. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
It's holding guys accountable to the standard and guys holding me accountable to the standard. You know, as an older guy, I've seen a lot. Been through different practices with different coaches. And now that we have this standard set, I got to keep guys accountable and they got to keep me accountable.
Welcome back to Coffee and Cream in the Morning. Andrew Rogers with me. I'm Ravi Lulla in for Damon Benning. And if you can't wait until Thursday to get out and see some local sports at the Pinnacle Bank Championship where we're at right now, you can go out to the Omaha Storm Chasers. They are back in town starting tonight against the Iowa Cubs. They're here from tonight all the way through Sunday. You've got free entry on the green tonight out on the berm. Bark in the Park tomorrow night. As you know, Big Dog Guy, my favorite promotion that they do. Followed right behind my second favorite promotion, the $2 deal days on the 10th. You know, maybe I might go out to Faith and Family Night for my birthday on Saturday too. Who knows? Maybe I'll spend the birthday out at Warner Park. It's a great place to hang out with friends, family, whatever you're doing. Just a good night out in Omaha.
Well, I'll add this too on Thursday night at Warner. The prospects, the Nebraska prospects have an alum pitching, Jordan Wicks. He pitches for the Iowa Cubs, so he'll be out there. So not only can you get your love for your home team, how about love for somebody that came from your home state?
There you go.
So something pretty cool there. So just tossing out little bits and details.
You know?
Maybe there's some added interest there. Pick up a ticket, head over to an Omaha Storm Chasers game. Speaking of picking up on things, or at least talking about things at a preliminary state, but you, at least from Friday on to this point, have no idea what's happening in college sports.
Yeah,
with the transitioning of schools and where the remaining schools will either go or stay or crumble or whatever you want to say.
Mm-hmm.
Washington State, Oregon State, who cares about them right now? Because Stanford and Cal are in the news.
Yeah.
They are in talks with the ACC, and it's early.
Mm-hmm.
We're at the embryo, right? Yeah. It's early talks to potentially have those two teams move into the ACC, which made me laugh yesterday when I first read it, because I'm like, do you know what the ACC stands for? It stands for the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Stanford and Cal famously not on the Atlantic.
I believe they are on the Pacific.
That's the opposite side of the country.
And if they were to join the ACC, that is just laughable to me. I can at least get past USC, UCLA joining the Big Ten,
sure,
because that's not in coordination with an ocean.
Sure.
But now that we are coordinating that, just the name made me laugh.
What's more ridiculous, Pacific Coast teams in the Atlantic Coast Conference or 18 teams in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I think it's still the 18 teams in the Big Ten right now. But I'm gonna hold my breath to say it's going to work out. I just need something else. Something's got to tell me, like, okay, there is a positive to all this. Right now, it just kind of seems like mayhem. It seems just havoc. It's kind of like the Nebraska defense. They want havoc. They want you to be in every play. They want you to run hard. That's what teams and this conference realignment talk is all about. Everybody's just kind of running away from the fire, but nobody knows where you're going yet.
well, then nobody knows where the next fire is going to be, right? Because that's the problem. Is
you run into another room, and all of a sudden now you're locked in there for a little bit, and here comes the fire. You got to run out.
It's like, they tell you when you grow up in the Midwest not to like try and run from a tornado, just to take shelter, because you don't know which direction it's going to turn next. You might be running right into its path. That kind of feels like the conference realignment we're at now, because the Pac-12 is in a burning pile on the ground now, right? Like they're the cow and Twister that just got tossed, right? But where is that tornado moving next? It's either the ACC or the Big 12. So maybe you find a landing spot in the ACC if you're Stanford and Cal. Obviously, the Arizona teams, Utah and Colorado, found a landing spot in the Big 12. But how long are you going to be safe there? Because you might just be hiding under a bridge, under the overpass while the tornado's coming by, and you might be in trouble here in a little bit, because I think the only two conferences that should feel safe are the Big Ten and the SEC, especially with the pressure that, Florida State and others have started putting on the ACC in maybe challenging the grant of rights deal and things like that.
Well, and that's what I find funny too, is you have these teams wanting to leave the ACC, and I'm sitting back and I'm thinking, well, Cal and Stanford joined the ACC. Okay, whatever. Like, you go ahead and join, but that doesn't make me want to stay. Like, there's still teams that are looking to see if there are greener pastures on the other side that will financially supplement their programs more than the ACC currently is.
Well, and I'm curious what additional teams would do to the grant of rights deal, because it does run through 2035, and which means they're kind of locked in through that time. So are you not getting in new money in terms of how to pay for these new teams? What share are they getting? What kind of deal are they getting? Because I think you'd have to be really careful if you're the ACC dealing with this, because I'm guessing, and again, nobody's read the grant of rights, so nobody knows what's in there exactly. And I'm not a lawyer, even if I could read it. So you wonder, though, if Florida State has to take a pay cut or Florida State and Clemson and Miami or whoever else, right, has to take a pay cut to accommodate the addition of Stanford and Cal. Does that give them an opening to say, hey, you breached your grant of rights deal because now we were promised this, we're not getting this, you're in breach of contract, we didn't agree to this, we're out? I don't know. But it seems like you have to be really careful if you're the ACC in how to navigate this, because you are already on kind of thin ice with some of your marquee programs. And maybe Stanford and Cal are insurance in the ACC's mind. If Florida State, Clemson, these teams do find a way out, you still have a quote-unquote power conference. The ironic thing about all of this is Oregon State is the best football team right now of the four left.
Right.
Like, I get Stanford and Cal are bigger brands. I get Stanford has this huge endowment.
But if you're looking for competition.
But if you're looking for college football, which is what's powering all of this, Oregon State's better than them right now.
Yeah.
They might be the one that's left out in the cold the most.
And that's only because of name recognition, right?
Name recognition, size of the school.
Yeah, you don't think is a team you want to play. That seems like a Mountain West team, right?
It does.
It doesn't seem
Washington
it doesn't
State
seem like a Pac-12 team
feels
anymore.
like a Mountain West
right.
team. Yeah.
Now, what I have thought about, though, is this, because Pete Thamel, I think, was the writer that sparked my thoughts yesterday when he was talking about how if you want to build a West Coast-based league, if you are doing something in the ACC, you have to grab teams from the Mountain West. They have to then join the ACC. However, it's not going to be tomorrow that Mountain West teams jump out, because I don't think buyout for Mountain West teams are reduced until 2024-25. So as I kind of look toward that logic, I'm like, okay, how can the ACC survive until then?
Yeah.
And so he threw out maybe the American Athletic Conference or the Sun Belt. I would even throw in Conference USA. If we're just looking for placeholders right now, let's do that. But here's what you also have to realize is your placeholder is going to be around for a little while.
Yes.
So it has to be a competitive team like we're talking about with an Oregon State if you grab it from an AAC or the Sun Belt, whatever it ends up being. you can't go overboard.
No.
That's what I want people to kind of realize here is, yes, I know you want this conference to survive, but they can't go overboard and just grab and pluck 2 teams from the Sun Belt, 2 teams from the AAC, and then maybe one Conference USA team just to be like, okay, now we can wait on Boise State. Now we can wait on Nevada. Now you're going to run out of room.
Yeah.
And if you do go too far, now you have to wonder, okay, is Florida State really playing a game against
a conference game,
a
against
Conference
the Sun
USA
Belt
team?
school?
Right. Like,
Yeah.
are we really going to like get deep into those waters? So you really have to be, stingy on who you bring in.
Selective for sure.
But aside from all of that, if you do find a way to bring Stanford and Cal, yes, academically, you'll set yourself up fine, but that's still like plucking an AAC team.
Yeah,
right?
football-wise it is.
But you're not getting the competition level that you're looking for.
You get better history and better name recognition, but in terms of actual football, it's not an upgrade.
And I think that's what Florida State,
That's what they're
Clemson,
mad about.
and UNC are still thinking about.
Yeah,
Is like,
absolutely.
look, you can go out and grab these teams, fine, great.
How does it help?
How does this help us?
Does this make us more competitive with the SEC? No. Does it make us more competitive with the Big Ten? No. The Big Ten just added Oregon, Washington, UCLA, USC. All programs that have at least some success in football, and some have really high-level success in football, right? You're wanting to go get Stanford and Cal. Their most famous thing that's ever happened there is the band is out on the field. Like, that's what we're doing to keep up with Georgia and Alabama and LSU and Texas A&M. Like, that's what we're doing at Stanford and Cal. Where our Olympic sports will be great. Nobody cares. In what we're doing right now, no one cares. That's not to say that those aren't important sports and things like that, but in what's driving all of this, no one cares about the Olympic sports. That's been made very clear. Like abundantly clear.
And don't worry, tomorrow I actually have been compiling some athlete stories, some athlete notes. I've got perspectives from 4 different athletes in 4 different sports that I'm going to share on this show tomorrow. I'm going to hold off on that, and I'm really it's going to be a big tease. We're open tomorrow at 9:00. That's when I'm going to get into these stories, because I think you'll be amazed by how this really affects those Olympic sports athletes that are being forgotten about. Not to say that even yesterday we talked about Eli Drinkowitz and how he was all for the student athlete, but it was kind of ironic because he's still a college football coach.
Yeah.
So
he still benefits
at
from
the end
all
of the day,
this.
what are you actually doing? Are you having conversations with your AD and saying, hey, bring in the soccer coach, bring in the tennis coach, let's figure out how to find a solution?
Yeah.
Or are you just going to state what they are, right? Your opinion is a fact and how it does affect people, but what are you doing to help solve that issue? We'll get into those athlete stories tomorrow, because you'll sit back and be like, it'll put you in your place. NCAA, it'll put you in your place. Let's take a short break. We'll talk to Mike Schaefer. We'll continue conversations like this and get into fall camp again next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes.
We could do that. I mean, I've done it in the past where, like, so-and-so, we did this at Baylor,
Rogers
where, like, so-and-so was going to kick 45
in 3
and in,
minutes.
and this guy had a better leg, so he was going to kick further out. I don't see that right now, but I don't have a total handle. They're both capable of making kicks from a pretty far distance. So what I'm doing right now is just quantifying.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Covering Nebraska football and recruiting for 24/7 Sports. Here is Mike J. Schaefer.
Yeah, that's a grown-ass man right there.
Mike Schaefer.
I don't know. There could be bacon involved.
Mike Schaefer.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks, Brian Edwards, for me.
Here is Mike Schaefer.
We could do that. I mean, I've done it in the past where, like, so-and-so, we did this at Baylor where, like, so-and-so was going to kick 45 and in, and this guy had a better leg, so he was going to kick further out. I don't see that right now, but I don't have a total handle. They're both capable of making kicks from a pretty far distance. So what I'm doing right now is just quantifying who's, it's kind of like a graphic of who's better for more kids. But honestly, right now, I'm not even into that part of it because it's still kind of early for me. I'm just collecting data, and I'm just trying to collect data and see who's making more kicks from whatever distance it is.
That's Ed Foley talking at practice yesterday. Fall camp in full swing. Just over a week now of practice of the team being in Selleck. A pretty good mini documentary was released too on YouTube yesterday by the Nebraska video team. So that was pretty interesting. I have some thoughts. We'll do that tomorrow as well. We'll get into that more. But without stopping here, let's go to Mike Schaefer. Schaefer joining us on Tuesdays now for the foreseeable future. Schaefer, good morning. You look great, man.
I appreciate it. For those coffee and cream historians, this is now my third time slot since the show's inception.
Only you would keep track of that.
This is going to be a trivia question, I'm sure, down the line. So I just, I want people to keep that in mind. Like Tommy Hill, I'm going to bounce around a little bit, but I'm going to find my way home, and people are going to regard me as a leader someday.
Okay, Tommy Hill. What's his home? Is it in the secondary?
His home's in the secondary. I mean, he's an incredibly gifted athlete. I also really would like to see him get as many opportunities as he can as a returner. I mean, he's a guy with the ball in his hands that I think is a fascinating player. He's a great high school player from Florida. It obviously didn't go well for him last year, but I think there's some really interesting stories in Nebraska's secondary. I've decided I'm going to start calling them the second chance secondary, because this is basically what Nebraska has. They have a lot of guys that were overlooked as recruits. They have a lot of guys that showed up last year in 2022 that didn't really amount to much in Deshaun Singleton and Omar Brown and Tommy Hill. And these guys are all going to be depended upon in 2023. And it seems, at least taking Evan Cooper at his word, or Isaac Gifford, or whichever Nebraska representative we would like to attribute things to, it seems like they're all having very good fall camps and good springs and putting themselves in position to really help out Nebraska's secondary. And I think the secondary is really interesting. Like I said, there's a lot of different kind of underdog narratives that can be found in this thing. And I think that's plays into how Evan Cooper wants those guys to have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder as they're out there.
Schaefer, if I really pressed you on it, who would you say are your 5 starting defensive backs when we roll up to Minnesota?
Okay, so are we counting the Rover as one of the defensive backs?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so that's going to be Isaac Gifford.
Yep.
And then we're going to look at Quentin Newsome.
Yep.
And then after that, it gets a little bit more challenging, but Malcolm Hartzog's got to be in there in some capacity, I suspect. After that, you have your safety spots. I'm just going to throw a couple guesses out there, and I think guys are going to rotate a lot. I think Corey Collier is going to probably be one of your starters, or at least playing quite a bit early on. And then, after that, I mean, you kind of get into the Omar Brown, Deshaun Singleton territory. I just don't know that we're going to see Marquise Buford for a little bit yet, really until he's able to get healthy. But they have plenty of options, in the secondary. And so Evan Cooper can really kind of mix and match as he desires. So there's a good chance that when, and I don't know who would be doing this, if someone decides to play this interview back, right after the starters are announced for the Minnesota game, maybe I'm only going to get like 1 or 2 of these right. But, I'm putting the effort out there, and that's what counts.
Mike Schaefer, Nebraska football and recruiting for 24/7 Sports, at Mike J. Schaefer, with us on Coffee and Cream. Schaefer, you've covered Nebraska football for a long time now. How has this fall camp felt different to you than the ones Nebraska has been over let's just say the last 5 years? What stood out to you where you find yourself saying, finally, they're doing blank?
I don't know that there's a lot of that. I mean, I don't have enough access to really pretend like I know that things are massively different. And you see the videos and you watch stuff, and I haven't watched the full 30-minute video that they released yesterday. But you obviously, they're attempting to kind of build the team camaraderie that you would get in an NFL training camp by doing the dorms thing. I really like the way that Ed Foley just sort of went about talking about the kicking competition. I mean, he just sort of outlined it as, I don't really care that Tristan Alvano made 5 kicks in Memorial Stadium last November. I don't really care that Timmy Bleekrode has kicked in college football games before. All that matters to me is what's happening right in front of my face. And I kind of think that's the mentality that a lot of these assistants sort of have. Like, we as reporters and media, and then, of course, the fans come in with their own baggage about this team and these players and everything else. But for the coaches, it all gets to be fresh, right? Like, all the way down to Ed Foley and I had a conversation to the side yesterday, and he was talking about when he first got to Nebraska, one of his jobs was to just go through and watch everybody and see athletically if they could be better as kick returners or punt returners or, on the special teams than what they've used. And it's just everything because of that just feels fresh. And so what I guess I appreciate, and this has almost nothing to do with what they're attempting to do, it's just that everything has a fresh eyes on it. Like, people get to start over, We get to view players in different lights. We get to view, position groups in different lights. It's a fresh start. And so I guess more than anything, I appreciate that. Now, that doesn't win you games when it comes to the actual season. So without being able to sit in there at practice and really tell you this is different and that is different, I appreciate that everything sort of has a fresh feel to it. So at the very least, we're not having the same stagnant conversations for the 5th off season in a row.
Schaefer, you mentioned the fresh look that the coaches get at the roster, and maybe I'm reading too much into this, and I guess that's my question for you. Is it seems like when Matt Rule and the staff got here, that they were maybe a little surprised that the talent level was better than they expected. That's kind of the vibe that I get when I hear them talking about a lot of these position groups, whether it's Matt Rule calling Gifford, an NFL type player, or any other various examples. It feels like to me they saw the record from last year and the last few years and expected a certain level of talent, and then they got here and maybe were pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. And look, I mean, Nebraska's won what? 4 games, 3 games, 5 games. I mean, so it's not like they've been stacking up much wins. It's not like they've been sending guys off to the NFL en masse. So I could see from the outside looking in that you wouldn't think that this team has as much talent as it might. But I don't think talent is what held Nebraska back for 5-6 years. I mean, they just had poor coaching. They've been put in poor spots. They've done poor things. They've made very questionable decisions, whether it was the previous coaching staff or players on the field or whatever. And so, with a fresh set of coaches, with a fresh approach, you have an opportunity to move past some of that. And I do believe that Matt Rule inherited a roster that can go win games in 2023. And beyond that, I think this coaching staff believes that they can win games at a higher level in 2024. So 2023 is about, let's get some of the rust out of the way. Let's get some of these sort of awkward moments in a transition out of the way. Let's start stacking days for 2024. And let's win some games. Let's go to a bowl game. But the eye on the prize is for 2024. Let's get Jeff Sims to the point where he comes back and he can be one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten, and we can take a big step forward. I mean, I think they are pleasantly surprised by what they have in front of them, but they still have to go and make it matter. And that's the next step. But I certainly have always felt, and maybe it's just my natural inclination. I felt like there was plenty of talent for Mike Riley when he got here, when Bo Pelini was the head coach. Now, that was a different roster because it was pretty, top heavy veteran talent, less maybe underneath. But then, with Mike Riley into Scott Frost, same thing. I felt like there was an ability to quickly get here and win football games. I feel the same way for Matt Rule after what he inherited from Scott Frost.
Mike, I've been thinking and compiling a few reports regarding schedule predictions, and one that really stuck out to me the other day, I came across it last week, was if Nebraska was to lose week 1 to Minnesota, so they had a loss on the schedule there, but also had Nebraska winning 7 games this season. Do you think there's a real shot, still a solid chance at winning 7 if a loss comes in week 1 to Minnesota?
It would mean Nebraska would have to do really well in the month of October, right? Like you would have to have wins against Illinois and Purdue, as well as Northwestern. So I think they have 3 games in October. So to me, you're probably looking at a 3-2 start there, followed by a 3-0 October, followed by getting one of those games in November. Like I think that's sort of I think that would kind of have to be the recipe in my mind. But and maybe you sort of look at it like not just October, but you extend, in between the Illinois and the Maryland game, they got to win one of them or something. I don't know. I mean, so it's a possibility, but I think that obviously, this is going to sound really stupid, and I kind of intended to, but the easiest way to get to 7 wins is to win your first game, so you only need 6 more. And so, I sort of just look at it like this Minnesota game to me is pivotal for all sorts of reasons. And even if they don't win it, if you go out and you play well and you sort of prove that you're in it at the very end, the confidence boost that they're going to get off of that is pretty big. Now, the reverse is true. If they go and they get the doors blown off by a Minnesota team that is equally as rebuilding right now as what Nebraska might seem to be doing, then you're going to have a ton of questions going into all of it. So a lot of it is just going to be, how does a veteran coach navigate that feeling after that first game? If they win it, can you quickly get them ready to go to Colorado and then everything that follows? If they lose it, can you get them to salvage what they can out of that game, flush it, turn around and win the next 3 in your non-conference? I mean, it's a bigger challenge than I think people might think.
We're talking with Mike Schaefer of Nebraska 24/7. Schaefer, we're a week into fall camp. We haven't got to see them a ton, but we have heard from both coaches and players a decent amount so far. Have you felt like you've learned anything through the first 7 or so days of fall camp?
Not really. I mean, I felt like I got confirmation that my apprehension about Teddy Prohaska was well placed. I know on this show in the past, talked about how those conversations I had early in the summer about, hey, don't just assume that Teddy Prohaska is going to be the guy at left tackle. Like, this might take longer than you would think, yada, yada, yada. And I think that's kind of where we're at. So I think the apprehension that I had about the offensive line is still there, and it's maybe even emboldened a little bit because I don't love the idea of Turner Corcoran yet again being put into a left tackle role that's not a good fit for him, and it hasn't worked well in the past. Beyond that, though, a lot of it is just Matt Rule saying very pleasant things about players that I already like. So I don't know how much I'm learning or how much is just being reinforced. But, a lot of it is just like, hey, Matt Rule said this. And it's like, hey, I kind of think that. So I don't want to – I don't think I've learned a ton at this point in the juncture. But I also sort of approached this fall camp with the idea that I don't think the staff is just going to be giving away a lot that how they feel truly. I think, when asked directly, they're going to give answers, but I think you're going to get a lot of Marcus Satterfield type answers that, words are said, and then you go back and you listen to it and you're like, there's really nothing in this. And so I think we're going to get a lot of that in fall camp.
Schaefer, we spent a lot of time talking about conference realignment yesterday and a little bit today with the news that came out with the really early talks with Cal and Stanford to the ACC and what that could look like. It's so early to predict, but you've got a creative and complicated mind, so I think you'd be a great person to ask. Where do you envision this whole thing going? Where's the cap? If it ever got screwed on the bottle, we like to call conference realignment.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like until you get to the point where you're basically down to just 2 mega conferences, it's all just going to be up in the air. I mean, I don't know that I believe that the ACC can salvage itself enough that it's going to force this thing into 4 conferences. I like what the Big 12 has attempted to do, but ultimately, as you look at the list of those schools, do you see like a real difference maker in there emerging? You just don't have it. And I look at the Big 10 and the SEC as collections of mega brands, and the SEC more than the Big 10 because in recent memory, those teams have played better. But if we're talking just strictly from a helmet standpoint, it feels like we're headed to a big SEC and a big Big 10, and then some sort of like reliance between those two that you can get a similar set of rules to operate under. I mean, that's what a lot of this is we've got to get to the point where you have 2 different sides playing under the same set of rules, which has never been a thing that's happened in college football beyond just what the college game rules are. But every way from building your program to the off-season stuff to everything is sort of just left up to the discretion of these conferences until you get to the point where there's sort of a, an alliance, I guess, or an understanding between how you want this thing to look. I think we're just going to be in that kind of mode where I likened it yesterday to, you move into a neighborhood that's full of new construction and everything, sounds like it's going to be great in 2027 whenever you're done with the construction, but you don't know how long that's going to take. And you don't know how many nails you're going to drive over as you're driving through your neighborhood and then you're going to blow a tire. You don't know what this is going to look like. And new construction in a neighborhood is messy and it's loud and it's annoying. And you just want to get to the end of it. And that's how I feel about conference realignment. Like, I'm no longer interested in these 2 teams are going to do this because I don't care. Let's get these 40 teams to figure out where they're going to go and how this is going to look. And then let's move on from it, because I think the fans caught in the middle are sort of just going to start tuning this out at a really high level. And then you have to figure out how you keep college football interesting when you have 60 some teams playing for 12 some spots. And, you could have a Nebraska game in November where they're 7-2 and they have no real path at the playoffs and it doesn't matter. And they're playing a team that's 6-3 and it's just like it buried on a TV. I don't love where this is headed, but it feels like that's where this is headed. And so I'd rather just get there earlier than have to sit through this sort of unhappy period in the middle.
Schaefer, not to play devil's advocate here or anything, but if Nebraska's sitting at 7-2 and they're playing somebody at 6-3 with no clear path to the playoff, how is that any different than where we sit right now?
It's probably not, but I guess the idea is that all we've done in the last decade is just elevate the playoff to the point that it's superseded everything else in college sports. And so I just wonder if you get to the point where now that's even magnified, and you're sort of in this sort of conference realm where it's like you're fighting for what, 13th place in a conference or 12th place in a conference of 30 some teams. And yeah, you're upper half, but it's just, I don't know what we're going to do with this. Like, I just, I think you get to the point where if you have that many teams in a conference, you're diluting the overall quality of what you want anyways. And then you're setting up questions about how you're going to determine who's the best team in your conference when you don't play a schedule that allows you to play all these teams. Like, it all just leads to more conversations that get answered how? Through ESPN's playoff committee, through, voting, through another formula. Like, it's just, I think you get further from the idea that you're going to crown actual college football champions and more into kind of a crapshoot. And that's not necessarily bad. That can be incredibly entertaining. But I just don't know if that's good for the overall product of college football. And in an age where, it's increasingly easier for all of us to just sit at home to consume this sport, I don't know how you draw fans. Like, when these games become even less important, what does that look like in October and November when the weather's bad in Memorial Stadium? What does that look like when you're Trev Alberts and you've got a 90,000 seat stadium that you're trying to bring down, and suddenly, getting to 85% capacity is a real question. So I think there's a lot of sort of that we don't know how this is going to look and how people are going to react to it.
Speaking of people reacting to this decision, Schaefer, I've spoken to a lot of athletes in the other Olympic sports that will be affected or hypothetically based on the sport that they played in college would have been affected by a move like this. And I thought it was interesting hearing a bunch of different perspectives, and more times than not, I think I heard more the negative than the positive, but I did hear some spin the positive and how it could work, because I kind of wanted to take a all-encompassing approach to my questions. And I'll get into that with them or with those takes tomorrow, as I teased on the show earlier on. But I kind of wanted to ask you if you've heard any reactions from athletes about the changes, or if you even had thoughts of your own on how this does affect those other smaller sports in regards to the travel and the wear and tear that it will now bring, that they may be traveling across the country to, play a game.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly going to enhance the amount of time that these athletes spend in airplanes or buses or whatever. And less time on campus, less time in class. And while people might roll their eyes at that, a lot of these people aren't going professional in the sport that they're in. And so, if you're a engineering major or whatever, and you happen to also be an athlete, like, more time away from the classroom is going to be difficult for you.
Right.
But there's ways that,
talked about that off air a little bit yesterday.
Yeah. I mean, there's ways that you can mitigate that. And Nebraska's got a great athletic department that really puts their athletes first and foremost. So they're going to work on that in a way that everybody will. I mean, I think, I haven't had a lot of conversations with athletes that are not football players about this, but I think a lot of it is just like, what does it, do for my schedule? Where am I going to be at this certain time? The nice thing for Nebraska, at least right now, is you've already made this transition. So now it's just a matter of like, okay, so Oregon, Washington, UCLA, USC, you're going to go to the West Coast. That affects Nebraska less than it does for Rutgers and Maryland and Penn State. And so I think, at least from a very Nebraska-centric standpoint, it's not a huge deal right at this moment. But I would imagine for your greater fringes of your conference, the further far-flung places, like, your USC baseball, and you're going to go spend a weekend in Piscataway, and, then you got to turn around, you fly back home after that, cross country, and then you're going to turn around, you got to fly to play at Penn State. Like, it's just, scheduling is going to be really difficult, and there's going to be no shortage of teams that feel like they get screwed because there's no easy answers for any of it.
Schaefer, is it possible that, you mentioned this here, how Nebraska's kind of already made this move on the front edge of all this. Is it possible that the reason I still sort of enjoy this is because between Nebraska already being in the Big Ten, Creighton's obviously conference realignment was worked out well for them, is that it doesn't affect what we do really that much? I mean, is because I still kind of enjoy watching all the machinations of how everything works.
Yeah, and I don't know that it's unfair for people to get enjoyment out of it. It's like fun, what if fodder, and I understand that. It's more so that like I've sort of reached a point when Oklahoma and Texas and USC and UCLA both left. It's just like this is just a precursor to more moves. Like my impatience is the issue here more than anything else. Like if we're going to see more, let's just get this thing over with. But I think Nebraska being done and Creighton, being done with the Big East should allow fans of those respective programs to at least feel comfortable that they have a home. And in both situations, they have a home that isn't going anywhere. And so, it's easy to feel a lot better if you're a Nebraska fan about your future in the college football landscape than it certainly would be to be Washington State or to be Oregon State, or really, to be honest, some of those Big 12 schools. Because I think that's sort of what happens next. Like, can that band stay together and prove that they have value, or is it slowly going to fall apart too?
Schaefer, always good stuff with you. We appreciate your time. And next week, I guess we'll see you Wednesday at 7:30 since we're just bouncing around times. No, I'm just kidding.
All right. Well, have your people reach out to me, I guess, since it's just me. I'm a single operation.
No, we'll see you next Tuesday. Appreciate you, man.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
That's Mike Schaefer. When we come back, we will get into course conditions with Jim Nedrow here at the Pinnacle Bank Championship.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
All right, welcome back as we are live from the Pinnacle Bank Championship, the club over at Indian Creek. It is a beautiful morning, although I have been complaining about the sun. So as much as I tell you guys all out there that it's beautiful, which it is, if a breeze comes through, it would be a lot better. Maybe the man next to me can bring a breeze because you handle all the course conditions, right? So you can bring wind.
I do.
That's how that works?
I wish.
Darn. Jim Nedrow here with us, head superintendent at Indian Creek Golf Course. Jim, thanks for taking the time. You told me before we started, 19 years now you've been here. That's incredible.
February it'll be 19 years.
Absolutely incredible. So what's it, 7 years here?
Like for this event,
it's
7 or 8.
I think
2017 was the first year. Right?
Yeah, so year number 6, because if you count 17, this would be the 7th year.
Yeah, it went like that. It's crazy. It's crazy. 19 years flew, and now there's 7 years of flew. So.
Okay, so think back to 2017 for me. The course looked like what? And now today, the course looks like this.
Well, I mean, fairly similar. We added tee boxes on tournament 12, tournament 10, and tournament 6. 10 and 12 are the gray 1 and gray 3, and tournament 6 is black 6. We did that 3 years ago. No, this will be the second year that those tee boxes are in play. So we added about 120 yards at that point. We made some pretty significant changes in 2009, 10, and 11. Not with a tournament in mind, but certainly, it was kind of in the back of our heads when we were working with the architects. So pretty big changes then. Made a few tweaks in 2016, the year before the event came out. Added some bunkers, changed some tee complexes, a little bit of that stuff, but nothing really significant. I mean, it's just some minor changes. But
those seem pretty significant to me, though.
Yeah, I mean, 120 yards to any of us is a lot, right? But it has been fun to watch. I went up to hole 10 this morning and watched a couple of guys that played in 2020 and hadn't been back yet. So they're playing that tee box for the first time, and it does change the way they play, right? Maybe instead of a mid iron or a long iron off that tee, now they have a driver in their hand. Same with tournament 12. Kind of a mid iron would have been the play there for them, and now it puts a driver in their hand, which, the longer that ball's in the air, the farther it can deviate off a center. So that was the goal there. And it seems like it's made a difference talking to the players. So, yeah.
Jim, you've been here 19 years. I think you said you've been at a golf course one way or another since 99. So I guess, how did you get into this line of work? Was this always the plan, or what happened there?
It was not. So I went to school at Nebraska in Lincoln. I was going to be a vet. So a year and a half in animal science, and ended up went back to my hometown in Norfolk for a summer job, got a job at the golf course there, and just kind of fell in love with it. So went back and switched majors, and I've been doing it since. I mean, I grew up playing golf. That's kind of their parents would drop me off at the golf course in the morning, pick me up in the evening. So golf had always been a part of my life. I had just never been exposed to the agronomic side of things. And so it was that summer job, and the superintendent I worked for, Ryan Reifert, up there in Norfolk, that kind of took me under his wing and showed me that, hey, this can be a profession, right? This isn't like, my understanding of it was like most people, like Caddyshack, right? Like,
you live in the shack,
right?
Go after gophers.
So understanding, the science behind it, and the technical side of it, and man, this can be a professional opportunity. I think that's when the light bulb went off, and kind of been doing it ever since.
So instead of taking care of animals, you take care of the course.
Yes.
Everything that grows. You know, we talked to Alexis, and she takes care of everything that doesn't grow on the course. But you, on the other hand, you know, you take care of the roughs, the fairways, the greens, things like that, the tee boxes, as you said. You know, when you get to tournament week, and I'm just kind of curious, and it may not affect it at all. Outside of weather, and if the rain comes, or if it's really hot, do you find it difficult to like keep everything the way that it was the day before? Like, so like in regards to like, oh, I need the grass this certain length, or I need the greens to look like this and not get a rough patch here, or say a divot doesn't get repaired and now it kind of looks like you're probably, you know, I talked about being stingy with conference realignment earlier. You're probably pretty stingy about if there's like a divot unfilled, like you're the guy that goes up there and you're like running, like talking under your breath, like mumbling maybe some swear words.
For sure. I am OCD by nature, and this job like scratches that itch, right? I get to be out here every day and focus on the most minute of details. But you know, we've got a great team. And everybody understands what our goal is, right? And that's the goal 365 days a year. So we don't necessarily change any approach in terms of trying to keep conditions consistent from, you know, from day to day. You know, so that focus that you talk about is just something that's how we approach every single day. I mean, things change certainly this week and even the week before. Like, so advance week, what we call the week prior to the event week, is probably the most important. Tournament week kind of becomes really routine, right? Barring, you know, uncontrollables, right? Like significant weather issues or something like that. Tournament week just becomes like repeat, right? Don't mess anything up. Advance week's where you really put in the work, and even beyond advance week, it's, you know, the last putt drops on Sunday and we are already preparing for 2024. I mean, it's just a constant, you know,
it's a carousel.
We don't have what we have now if we aren't doing things in August and September and October and March and April and May. So, and that's what the team we have out here is really good at. They're good at not losing sight of, okay, the event's over. Now we can, you know, relax and let off the gas a little bit. Now it's like the event's over. And now it's, what do we have to do to get better for 2024? And so that helps, right? We aren't ever really playing catch up. We're just kind of maintaining and then tweaking things a little bit when we need to. You know, green speeds, you know, we roll and we try to, you know, increase firmness and manage our water a little bit differently during tournament week. And so we're usually pretty close, and then we just kind of have to dial it a little bit.
So Jim, I am curious if you're, you know, just an amateur out here playing versus a professional during this tournament week, what would be some of the biggest differences you would notice with the course conditions? I know some places, you know, with professionals let the roughs grow out a little bit longer, or they change, like you said, the green speeds, things like that. What are the biggest differences here at Indian Creek?
I mean, the rough for sure, right? But we have to start that. Typically, I mean, this year's been way different, right? We were like 10.5 inches of rain since June 30th.
Right.
So it's been easy. In years past, you know, to get rough where we want it for tournament, we have to start growing that out 3, 4, 5 weeks in advance. And so that tends to be an issue for daily fee golf or the public, you know, golfers like us, right? This year's been a little bit different. We were able to kind of maintain everything at a fairly playable condition, and then, you know, the rain gave us the ability to just kind of you know, the golf course just kind of did its thing on its own. So the rough for sure. I mean, green speeds, we couldn't maintain green speeds during the rest of the year at the speeds we maintain them here. I mean, the rounds it'd be 5.5 hour, 6 hour rounds, right? Our front nine specifically, the greens have a lot more topography to them, so it'd just be tough. So green speeds, firmness, rough, obviously. I mean, hey man, we're open on Monday, right? So like, if you wanna try it, which we do, man, you can come tee it up where these guys play on Sunday, and we won't have the rough mode out by Monday afternoon, so you can.
Oh, I'm playing
come
Monday.
Give it a shot.
I'm totally playing Monday.
Yeah.
Jim, quickly here, I've probably got about a minute. we mentioned the players that have come back now from 2020 that had to play a new tee box, but how about just the players in general here? What are their overall thoughts whenever they step on this course? Because a lot that I heard last year was it was one of their favorite stops on the tour. So whether it's the conditions or whatever, what do you normally hear from when players get off the course?
Yeah. What we hear and what I really enjoy, so they're all competitors, right? So there's a lot of tour stops that are pretty easy, right? And the cuts -6, -8, -9, and 24 under wins. And to us amateurs, that's great, right? Like we want to go play in the scramble and shoot 21 under. These guys want to play a course where 9 under, 10 under, 12 under, 15 under wins. And so this gives them an opportunity to have a tour stop where that's a score that's going to win, right? A cut's going to be just a few under par, and 12, 13 under is going to win. And, it forces you to be a player. You have to hit shots, and, the guy who plays the best golf is going to win here. And so it's like, it's a true test, and we enjoy that. That's what we like. So, and I hear that pretty consistently year in and year out, that's what they appreciate here.
Jim, we appreciate your time this morning, man.
Yeah,
Thanks so much. Enjoy the whole week. I'm sure you have your hands full, but just thanks for stopping over for 10 minutes.
Absolutely, guys. We appreciate you being out here.
That's Jim Nedrow, head superintendent over at Indian Creek Golf Course. Before we go to a break, I'd like to tell you about Dingman's Collision Center. Dingman's your one-stop shop for all your car needs. They have some awesome nonprofits that they give back to for you. You get to choose whether that's Epic for Girls, whether that's the Collective for Hope, or whether that's Community Alliance. They make a big push, especially for Epic for Girls. They love being paired up with them because that's the umbrella organization to amplify sports programming, call attention to the issues of inequity in sports, and address incidences of violence occurring in the world of youth sports here in Omaha. Dingman's is the place to go if you have any issue with your car. Take it over to them. They will take care of you. That's dingmans.com. Once again, Jim Nedrow here. We are at the Pinnacle Bank Championship, having some fun. Just really taking in the scenery. Ravi Lulla in the chair to my left. We will do the sports six-pack when we come back. That's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 1 minute. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Time now for the Sports Six Pack on Coffee and Cream with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning. Presented by Zipline Brewing Company, makers of Dear Old Nebraska Brew, the official beer of Nebraska alumni.
I can taste it now. Some Dear Old Nebraska Brew, or even the can opener Tropical Ale, which is the new focus over at Zipline Brewing. The Summer Crusher, and it's still a summer, right? So we can talk about this.
Oh, yeah.
I don't want to wish summer away, but I am looking forward to college football and everything else that happens in the fall. So, but no, the new Summer Crusher beer with guava and lemon, that's the can opener Tropical Ale. It is refreshing, slightly tart. Perfect for a hot summer day. I'm feeling pretty hot right now, so maybe I'll crush one after we do the Sports Six Pack. Sasha in the chair. She's been with us. Well, you can't see her, but she's been with us since Monday. She'll be here all week. She is the brains behind this entire operation, while Shane is the brains behind the operation back in the studio. And then Ravi and I are
I'm just here.
We are the numbnuts in the chairs, right? And whatever. So Sasha, kick us off. Shane, give us a question number one.
Question number one.
Okay, so who would you consider wide receiver U to be heading into next season? USC, Ohio State, LSU, or Alabama?
Ooh, those are good groups.
I'd say Ohio State.
Yeah, it's for me, it's either Ohio State or Alabama. I'll go Alabama.
So I think Ohio State, because especially with the leap that Garrett Wilson will make this year under Aaron Rodgers, I think that gives him the leg up. I know a lot of people like USC because of Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jordan Addison is highly touted, but I don't want to jump into the Jordan Addison shoes just yet as to him being Justin Jefferson. I think people are trying to do that with him. Like, oh, well, Adam Thielen was the guy. Jefferson came in, but now Jefferson's the guy. So Addison comes in. He's going to be the next Jefferson, right? I don't think that's how that works. I don't know about you, but I really like Chris Olave as well with the Saints. I'm just trying to really just think back. McLaurin was a product of Ohio State. Michael Thomas went to Ohio State, even though he's been, riddled with injuries over the last few seasons.
As we're sitting here, the best two guys might be from LSU, though, in Jefferson and Chase.
That is true.
You've got more volume.
Does that give you
right? You've got
does
more
that give you wide receiver you
at OSU and Alabama? I'm going to stick with Alabama, but I think one of those three is the right choice.
So Bama, Jamison Williams, Devontae Smith, Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, and Calvin Ridley. That's a good group.
You want to go back? You got Julio Jones, who isn't signed right now, but he's on that list as well. You got good groups for both of those.
Question number two.
Oh, this is great. All I got to do is just drink.
What else is new?
Vance in Omaha asks, we saw Aaron Boone get tossed for like the 1,000th time last night as a manager. So what is your favorite managerial blowout of all time?
Oh, man. Ooh. Who was it in AAA that had the one where, he covered the plate?
Oh, I think that was the Braves affiliate.
Yeah.
Covers the plate.
And then he got the base, and then he threw the base.
He made a whole production out of it. That's a little over the top to me. I like the ones that are a little bit more organic, where the guys just lose their minds. Like a classic, like Lou Piniella, Billy Martin blowout,
you don't know anything. Well, you don't know anything. No, you don't know anything.
That wasn't planned for sure, and they just snapped. It's kind of funny to see like a 60-year-old in a baseball uniform just lose his mind a little bit. So I'll go with just pick a Lou Piniella one.
Lou Piniella is a good choice. Let's see. In the top 25, if I scroll all the way down to number one, Lou Piniella again was at 6, and then Lou Piniella Part 2 was 5B.
I think my favorite was the Nationals manager when he picked up first base and threw it.
I love a good base throwing.
Mm.
I do appreciate when they throw a base. Those are always fun.
How about when Bobby Valentine put on a disguise?
Oh, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
He put on like the
Oh, man.
sunglasses and a mustache. Yeah.
All right.
Oh man, Bobby V. What a
Earl
guy.
Weaver forfeits game. And number 1, Bobby Valentine puts on a disguise.
There we go.
Gosh, there's a lot in history, but Aaron Boone does get tossed.
He does a
lot. A whole bunch of times.
Question number 3.
Billy in Lincoln, you guys talked a lot about hangovers and getting drunk yesterday. So who's one coach on this staff that you'd want to get drunk with?
Oh,
2-day hangover withstanding.
Ooh, yeah, that's the 2-day hangover means this has to be a really good time because.
And I want someone that's going to share a lot of things that they shouldn't share.
Yeah. You know, there's a part of me that just wants to see Matt Rule a little bit tipsy.
Mhm.
I don't know that I think he'd be fun. I don't know if he'd be the most fun one. I'll be honest. Getting drunk with Foley seems like
sometimes he seems drunk all the time.
I feel like I think I'm going to go Foley. I think that's my guy.
Only kidding. I do love me some Ed Foley though. I'd go with an old head. You know what?
There's not many to choose
I'm getting
from.
drunk with Marcus Satterfield, and here's why: because he's going to spill the beans of this offense, and I'm going to be the first one to know it. I'm getting drunk with Marcus Satterfield,
getting the scoop.
Why not? Right?
Always working.
All right, Shane.
Question number 4.
If there was one team you'd replace in the top 10 of the coaches poll, who would it be?
Ooh, that is interesting. You've got a lot of the usual suspects. Your Georgia.
Well, your top 4
Alabama,
was the college football playoff a while ago.
I like Florida State in there as a top 10 team this year. There people are high on them. I maybe go Penn State here. I'm not 100% sure. We don't know what Drew Aller's bringing to the table. I think I go Penn State. I'm not
I
sure.
like Penn State this year. I think I'd leave them in the top 10. I'm between 2. I would move up Washington. I think Washington deserves to be in the top 10. I really like how their team has shaped up this offseason, especially with Penix Jr. back. And, Kalen DeBoer is just such a
love Kalen DeBoer.
Good head coach.
I also do wonder if Tennessee was maybe lightning in a bottle last year. So I wonder.
See, I thought that.
I wonder.
But then I looked up a lot of things about Tennessee, and I'm like, no, they're still pretty good. I could see them being top 10. If I knocked out a team, oh, man, this one would crush me because I'm a huge Florida State fan. I'd probably drop Florida State to 11 and put Washington up at 9, move Clemson to 8.
See, I trust Florida State more than Clemson this year.
You know, another team I thought about, and you may shake your head at me, but USC, that's still a team to me where you have the firepower on offense, but let me know how you look defensively. That team could fall out of the top 10 for me easy.
I could see that.
But Washington deserves to be up there. All right, Shano.
Question number 5.
Norm in Omaha, what is your new or current binge, I'm assuming TV show, that you just can't wait to get home and watch on an everyday basis?
Suits.
Yeah, you mentioned Suits.
So Suits I saw a bunch of clips for, but then Nielsen, great listener of ours, said, you got to watch Suits. You really just have to watch it. So I started sitting down and watching that with the fiance, and now I literally can't get home to watch it. I can't wait to get home to watch it, but then I have to wait for her to get off work. So I have to wait all day to watch it.
That's tough. Yeah, so I like Suits. I feel like it maybe went a couple seasons too long. I was kind of over it by the last couple seasons.
How many seasons is it?
9. It's a lot.
Really?
It's a long show. Really, really good on the front end though. I just finished White Collar.
That's my favorite show of all time.
Which I really like White Collar.
Suits and White Collar kind of match
they're
up.
a little similar.
Yeah.
I like White Collar a little more. It's a little shorter than
6
Suits.
seasons.
Yeah,
and the last season's a half season.
And shorter seasons, I think, than Suits as well. So that's the second time I watched White Collar. So that's the one I've been on recently.
Question number 6.
I was wondering which question was the burp one. My favorite every time. Shane's little laugh every time is my favorite.
There it is.
Dennis in Norfolk, you get 10 tries to make a 40-yard field goal. If you don't nail one, you have to give up watching college basketball next season in entirety. If you make it, you get courtside seats for the Final Four and national championship game. Do you risk it?
I'm risking it. I'm risking it for the biscuit. I think I could kick a 40-yard field goal in 10 tries.
I 100% cannot. I don't think I could. I doubt that I could make like a 25-yard field goal in 10 tries. I just don't. I think it's
I bet
way,
you could toe ball it.
Maybe
from
25, not from 40.
Not
though.
from 40.
40, I think, is way harder than people realize. There's
I'd risk it for the courtside seats.
And is this just for Nebraska? Like Nebraska basketball makes it to the Final Four, or is this just overall?
I think it's just overall. I mean, if I risk not watching Nebraska basketball all year, I could probably live with that. That would probably be fine.
Okay, guy.
But no, I'm not taking that shot if I have to give up college basketball.
But you'll take a shot at Nebraska, I tell you that much.
Well, that's kind of my brand here.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I think I'd do it.
There's a 0% chance I can kick a 40-yard
especially if I
field goal.
could team up with Tristan Albano.
But he's going to coach you up?
He's going to give me some pointers, yeah, and then I'm going to kick a 40-yard field goal, and I'll bury it on like the 8th try. It'll be lit.
Yeah, I'm not making that field goal.
Yeah, but if we get to 10, I'm going to be nervous. Not going to lie. Shane, thank you for the questions, and thank you for everybody else out there for your questions. Before we send you off, I'll tell you one more time about Pratt Dental. They have this new service, I think is the best way to put it, called BioClear. Dr. Pratt is the only dentist in Nebraska that provides this service, and Pratt Dental is located in North Platte, if you were wondering. Now, the BioClear method and modern smile design can correct many aesthetic dilemmas in a permanent and in a less invasive manner than traditional treatments such as crowns. Look, this is an alternative to a crown. Multiple restorations in the same day, less time, less waiting, less invasive, fewer appointments. I know those were the details you were really wondering as I was going through the BioClear method. 308-221-2800 is the phone number. That's how you contact Pratt Dental. Give them a call. They create healthy smiles. That'll do it for the show today. Out of the Pinnacle Bank Championship, we'll be here all week. We'll be back tomorrow. See you then.